Right. And then you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. Can you hear? Can we hear? Okay. So we already started our Township Committee meeting over at Town Hall. They can't?
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, can you? Wait, do I need to be this close?
Oh. A little closer. You should be able to make it closer.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. We started our meeting over at Town Hall, so we have already done the flag salute and the roll call and had our executive session. I do want to make a couple of announcements before we start tonight. First, I need to read the meeting rules, which is that there is no new business introduced after 10:30 p.m., which means we will need to end the query part of this session by 10:15 because we have other business which we need to finish then by 10:30. Public comment will be accepted at all meetings. Speakers will be limited to 5 minutes each. I ask you to please be succinct in your questions and or comments because I'd like to give as many people as possible the ability to come up and ask their question and to have them answered. And all meetings adjourn no later than 11:30 p.m. Also, tonight, the meeting will be video streamed live on the Township's website, but because we're here at the PAC and not at Town Hall, it is not being broadcast on our local TV channels. But a recording of the meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the Cablevision Channel 15 and Verizon Channel 35 on Friday, December 1st at 8 p.m. A YouTube video link will also be available on the Township's website after the meeting. For official notices and updates regarding this meeting, residents are encouraged to check the Township website, Facebook and Twitter feeds, and the local PEG channels, Cablevision 15 and Verizon 35. Residents can also subscribe to receive email blasts for various Township announcements and news events on the website. Okay. That brings us to tonight's continued presentation and discussion of the proposed quarry redevelopment plan, which is a draft concept plan. I'll be starting off tonight by giving a brief presentation on the redevelopment process. That will then be followed by Joe Sorgi of JM Sorgi. He is the LSRP, which stands for Licensed Site Remediation Professional, and he will give a summary of the work that he has done at the site. And we will then have a presentation by Community Investment Partners, who are the developer or potential developer for the site. We will then go to public comment. And then after that, we will continue with the rest of our meeting. Okay, so I'm going to come down now to give a brief presentation on the process. Oh, I think you guys all have to come down too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the first slide, though. Yeah, you guys, the front row is reserved for y'all. Or second row. Okay. So I know you're not going to be able to read that, so I'm going to read it to you. But basically, this is the flow chart of the redevelopment process. And the first box there, right there, what it says is the governing body adopts a resolution directing the planning board to undertake a preliminary investigation of an area for redevelopment criteria and conduct a public hearing. The second box, it says Planning Board prepares a map showing the boundaries of the proposed redevelopment area and the location of parcels to be included with an appended statement setting forth the basis for investigation, in other words, a planner's report. The third box says Planning Board sets a date for a public hearing and gives public notice describing the boundaries of the area, the location of the map for public inspection, followed by Planning Board completes public hearing and makes recommendation to governing body on whether or not to designate the proposed area as an area in need of redevelopment. In the next slide, I'll go over the dates on all of when this has been done, but so far, all of those things have been done. Then in this box here, it says governing body adopts a resolution designating proposed area as a redevelopment area. So that happened back in January, which again, I'll show you a timeline in a minute. Then governing body delegates to the Planning Board the task of preparation of a redevelopment plan. Then Planning Board causes the planner to work on the preparation of a redevelopment plan and submits to the governing body for action. And then the last box says governing body adopts by ordinance the redevelopment plan after introduction of the ordinance and a public hearing. So that's the legal process by which a redevelopment plan happens. And the point that we're at is this last box here. We have not introduced an ordinance. We are working on a draft ordinance. That's what we did last meeting and then also this meeting. At some point, we would then need to introduce the ordinance if we're going to go forward with it, and then at some point there would be a public hearing. So let's get to the next one. Okay, so back in December of 2015, the governing body appointed a Quarry Advisory Council, which consisted of Mayor Carol Bianchi, Township Committee Member John Millay, our planner Dave Schley, the Township Engineer Tom Timko, our Township Administrator Bruce MacArthur. And that group met 7 times over a period of 7 months and included some meetings with various representatives from the potential developer, who was the contract purchaser of the property at Millington Quarry. Then in July of 2016, the Quarry Advisory Council wrote a report, which they then sent to the Township Committee, and that report is on the website, and basically what it said was that they did recommend that we go through the redevelopment plan process. So then in August of 2016, the committee passed a resolution authorizing the Planning Board to undertake a preliminary investigation to determine whether the Millington Quarry Inc. property is a non-condemnation redevelopment area according to the statutory criteria. The Planning Board then did their first investigation and report in November of 2016. And then in January of 2017, the Planning Board adopted a resolution recommending that it is an area in need of redevelopment. Then in February of 2017, the Township Committee passed a resolution declaring the Millington Quarry property as a non-condemnation redevelopment area according to the statutory criteria. So then in April, that's when we really had the first big presentation about this redevelopment, and we had our Planning Board planner, Dave Banish, went through the list of what were the criteria for a successful redevelopment plan. What were the positives and negatives of doing something like this? What kinds of things should be included? And some of those things, I know I went over it last meeting, but for those people that weren't there, it was things like that we wanted it to be open to the public, that there would be a lot of open space, that it would be tax neutral or positive, but not tax negative. And so there were a whole list of things. And again, that whole report is on our website if you look under Quarry Redevelopment Plan. Then on April 20th, the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs just basically sent us a letter confirming the redevelopment designation. In both May 15th and 24th, there were 2 informal presentations, which were more dialogue, question and answer sessions with the potential developer. Those were both held at Town Hall. I'm sorry. I'm reading it here and it's not up for you. Okay, there we are, sorry. Okay, so what I was just reading was the 2 May informal sessions. Then on October 24th was when we did the draft of the ordinance. So over the summer, we had obviously been working on what was going to be in the ordinance, and that group was basically our planner, our engineer, and our planning board planners, myself, John Millay, were the main people involved in that. Also, Bruce MacArthur, our administrator. So then on the 24th was the first time that we showed the draft or potential possible draft ordinance. Then tonight, we're going to obviously continue, but one of the things that I wanted to do tonight and going forward was I feel that that the public has not gotten a lot of accurate information. There's a lot of misinformation out there on a number of websites that I am not part of, so just know that I'm not reading those. But we need to get accurate information so that people can make an accurate decision. So tonight, we do have Joe Sorgi of JM Sorgi. He's the LSRP for the quarry, so he's going to be here tonight to speak. And then we're also going to hear from Community Investment Partners, who are the potential developer. We're then going to have 2 more informal information sessions. Those are the kind of sessions where you can have a dialogue. So those will be informal. They will be held at Town Hall. You can speak with the potential developers. You can speak with their environmental experts. You can speak with their architect, their engineer. Much more back and forth dialogue, which we don't have at Township Committee meetings. After that will be our next Township Committee meeting, which will be December 12th. At that meeting, we have arranged to have 2 of our environmental experts, which are the Elm Group and Princeton Hydro. They did all of the environmental work for us back when we did the rehabilitation plan in front of the planning board, and then also when we were working on the settlement agreement. So these are 2 companies who work for the town, not for the quarry, not for the developer. They are going to be hired tonight through a resolution to come to the next meeting. You have to hire them before they can even come to a meeting. They can't just come without being hired. So we'll be hiring them tonight with a resolution to come to the next meeting, and so we will have presentations from both of them on what was the work, just basically giving a summary and being able to answer questions of the public. What did they do? What did they find? What a summary of their findings from when they worked on this project for us, for the town. And then our last Township Committee meeting for the year will be on December 26th. Okay, so with that, the next speaker that we will have will be Mr. Sorgi, if he's here.
Right.
Oh, there you are. Okay, very good. I don't know if you want to, Anthony, turn this off. Sure. No, I'll sit on the
Okay, my name is Joseph Sorgi. I'm LSRP. We started out working with the quarry in 2008. Late in the year, the quarry had imported a lot of fill. There was various testing done by various consultants on behalf of the township and on behalf of the quarry, and they wanted an independent review of all the data. So they brought us in and we reviewed all of the existing data and the topographic maps over the years to try and estimate the volume of fill that was present in the quarry. At the end of that process, we determined that the some of the fill that was brought in exceeded the 2008 NJDEP cleanup standards. Going back a little bit, the DEP, the previous cleanup standards were passed in 1999, and they had upgraded them in 2008. So we applied them to the review of the quarry data. On that basis, we identified essentially asphaltic material in the fill, which exceeded the 2008 standards sporadically in the data. We had not taken any independent data of our own at that point. So at that point, we reported a discharge to DEP, which is the process where you go under the DEP, where they then, in those days, provided oversight for the remediation of that problem, whatever it is. You may have run into it with tanks and with other things. It's the same process. Once we did that, the process at that time was to voluntarily come into the DEP and request a case manager be assigned. That was referred to as a memorandum of agreement, and that was submitted in early 2009. The DEP approved that, and then we prepared an investigation plan to try and get our own data to assess, well, what's really in the fill that's in the quarry. So at that point, we submitted that to the DEP. We were assigned a case manager out of the Northern Field Office, Steve Mason. He reviewed everything and approved the initial investigation plan. At that point, the township retained Icon Engineering to essentially provide oversight during the investigation and to split samples with JMS during that process. That process took place in the fall of 2009, and the data was summarized and presented to DEP in 2010. DEP approved a second phase investigation where we had proposed additional sampling, borings, drilling, test pits through the areas of the fill in order to define the edges of the fill and to determine whether there was anything else in the fill that we missed on the first round, because the first round was sort of a phase one. Again, the township retained Icon Engineering. Icon Engineering took duplicate samples. We compared notes at the end of that. We submitted a final report to DEP in 2000 and, if I can get in my ears right, 2012. DEP at that point, in the meantime, in Trenton, they had changed the remediation process that was going on. In 2009, the legislature passed the Site Remediation Reform Act. That was a critical piece of legislation which essentially changed the way the DEP reviewed remediation. Essentially, they created the Licensed Site Remediation Board and licensed site remediation professionals in 2012. And at that point, DEP's case managers essentially were no longer involved in the projects. So at that point, we had submitted a draft remedial action plan to DEP. The DEP case manager called me and said, under the new rules, they can't review and approve. It's going to be up to the LSRP. So at that point, I think I was retained in May 1st of 2012 as the LSRP of record for the site. We submitted the remedial action work plan in August of 2012, along with the remedial investigation report for the site. In that report, we brought in all of the data that the township had created, the data that we had created, and presented it and provided a remedy for the site that we believe is protective. Essentially, the remedy requires a consolidation of the impacted material in the quarry, which has been done. There were 3 areas of fill originally identified. Those are all consolidated into one area of fill at this point. And then it required the installation, regrading to meet the township grading requirements, and then the installation of a demarcation barrier over that fill material, and then a minimum of 2 feet of heavy red rock as the cap over that site to prevent any direct contact to the fill material. So that was the plan that was submitted in 2012. Then there was a series of planning meetings and some litigation between the township and the quarry, which I testified at several of those hearings. They're in the record somewhere. Eventually that got resolved, and the remedy, we were preparing to go forth with a remedy. The remedy we started to implement in 2016 and completed it in late October 2016. So the entire fill area has been capped in accordance with the DEP regulations. I was also asked by the mayor to sort of try and explain the LSRP role in all this and who we report to and that kind of thing. under the Site Remediation Reform Act, which created this process. We obtained a license. We have to get continual education credits every year. Every 3 years, well, after the initial 3 years, we had to pass a licensing exam in order to be an LSRP. I think there's about, I could be wrong on the number, I think there's like 500 LSRPs in the state. Under our license, we are responsible to the state of New Jersey, to the DEP and the licensing board to essentially complete remediation in accordance with technical requirements for site remediation, which is Chapter 7:26E of the regulations, along with several thousand pages of guidance that cover what an LSRP can do, what they can't do, what's considered a reasonable remediation. The remedy here is designed to prevent direct contact. There is no other impact associated with the asphaltic material, which is essentially ground asphalt pieces that are caught up into that fill. Now, there's other material in there that we've tested. It's all reported in the document, but none of that material is mobile. It was tested by both ICON and JMS to determine whether it would leach. All the tests came out negative. The only chemical that we're aware of that is above a standard in those tests is arsenic, and arsenic is a naturally occurring element in the Hook Mountain basalt, which is essentially what this mountain is created out of. So the fact that arsenic is there is because quarrying operations have gone on for over 100 years, and they've exposed the red rock and more importantly the darker colored shale rock, which contains arsenic in a natural situation. So I don't know whether that covers everything for everybody at this point, but where we are now is that the remedy's done. We're prepared to issue the final remedial action report. We will then obtain a permit from DEP, and then then I can issue an RAO to close out the fill. I think I mentioned DEP was involved early on and approved all the investigation plans. DEP will review every report that I submit, and they will either agree with it, administratively close it, or they can audit it if they like. They can reverse any RAO that they want to if they feel that the technical requirements have not been met. And this is the process in New Jersey. This is what was created with the 2009 Act, and there's really no other way to accomplish remediation. So that's my discussion for tonight, and I will stick around for questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next presenter will be community partner Community Investment Partners. Okay, thank you. Sorry. And then after that, we will have public questions and public comment. Okay.
Wow. Last time I was here was for a recital. That was a lot easier than tonight. Anthony Splendore, I'm a member of Community Investment Partners. I'll just give you a quick agenda of the topics we'd like to discuss, and I'm going to go as quickly as I can. There's a lot of information to cover, but we're really here for you all so you can ask questions and get comments, and there's a hard stop, so I want to be cognizant of that. I'm here with Dave Plasek. Is that Dave? From Community Investment Partners as well. So before I begin, and I was advised not to say this and really just focus on the plan, as I just want to give you guys a personal comment from me. I hear you. I hear all of you. I've lived in this community for 19 years, and I have a lot of empathy for all your comments and concerns. I don't think you come out if you don't have comments, concerns, and questions. And I think we would all benefit in making sure that we provide the opportunity to listen and to reflect on those things. And to the extent we're part of that process, I want to be here for you to do that. I'm not saying we will all agree at the end of the day, but I hope we can compromise and come up with a plan that will be positive for our community. And we've been working on this for 24 months, and I know for most of the public, you have not been part of that process. And for that, I wish you were, and you were more involved. And so, I mean, for us, we're taking a step back and trying to really understand what your concerns are so that we can, to the extent, incorporate those or understand them or provide solutions. That's important to us. I hope that through a deep level of understanding, hopefully tonight will be the beginning of that process from us, you'll come to reflect that this can be a positive for our community and that we have the opportunity to control our destiny and do something that's positive. I understand that there will be points where we disagree, and I get that. And there may be disagreement amongst yourselves, amongst the Township Committee, with us. I just hope that when we go through that we build each other up, and that we show our community the best of our community, and even during stressful times that we do something that's positive and solution-based. So, having said that, the agenda will be, Dave and I will talk a little bit about CIP and the shop-off relationship and who we are. We'll talk about our take on the environmental remediation and just sort of touching on some of the stuff that Joe did not share. We'll talk briefly about the process we participate in, but not much. I'll present with Dave the plan itself, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. I would encourage you guys to come to the work sessions because a lot of these things require dialogue back and forth, and that's a much easier format, as the mayor suggested, that we can do those things. We'll talk a little bit about the marketing and viability. I know there's lots of questions about that on different components of the plan. We'll touch on traffic, and then I'll summarize some points so that then we can wrap up and you guys can ask questions and provide comments. So with that, do you want to give an introduction? Well, I'll do the introduction for myself at least. So my role in this is, I've been in town, I've built a business in town. My wife and I have been here for almost 20 years, raising 3 kids. We're in the same school system you guys are. I sit in the same traffic. I understand all the comments and concerns. We came in here when we were in our 20s, but I believe strongly that this site is an opportunity and an asset. And for better or worse, although my wife would probably disagree, we volunteered to be a part of this process because there has been a long history, as Joe and the mayor has talked about, of litigation on this site. And we felt as though if we could enter into a collaborative, co-creative process, we could end up with something much better and much stronger. And that's why I, was fortunate enough to meet Dave and work with Dave on other projects and introduce Shop Off and then eventually turn that into Community Investment Partners. I'll let Dave share a little bit about himself.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Thanks, everybody, as well. It's, Anthony said it, and we really mean it. When we see large turnouts like this, we appreciate that. We want to hear from the community. In fact, when Shop Off Realty Investments first met with Township committee members and staff and the community at large to talk about this project, there was no plan in our mind. I think the first question that was asked was, what's the township looking for? What do you want to see here? And that's really the development approach that I've taken my whole life, and that's what Anthony's done in his career as well. So that's the synergy that he was talking about when the immediate bond we had is, people joke we're anti-development developers because we take a different approach to these things. So I'm Dave Plasek. I'm technically with Shop Off Realty Investments. They originally had the contract to purchase the quarry. In September of this year, that contract was sold to a newly created development entity called Community Investment Partners. That's really spearheaded by Anthony Pearl Bedron, who's a Johnson & Johnson family member who's local in this area of New Jersey. They wanted to acquire this site. They've got an environmental component to not only their lifestyle, but kind of the greater good they want to instill in the communities that they develop. They were both part of a phenomenal project in Jersey called the Willow School. If you haven't heard about it, I recommend you look it up. You should see some of the thought-provoking environmental and conservation types of elements to that project that were developed 14, 15 years ago. really thought-leading environmental initiatives to restore a site that was dying. And really that relays nicely and parallels nicely to the quarry site that we have. It's a very difficult site to develop. It's a barren landscape. It's a moonscape, as some have been calling it. How do you bring that back to life? It really takes an art and a science to be able to do that. And Anthony has the skill set and the initiative. Pearl definitely has the skill set in the initiative and certainly the financial backing and wherewithal to implement a project of this magnitude. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to join that team. So I've been doing real estate investments and development for 16 some odd years. Just a short resume on me. I've invested over $3.5 billion in real estate nationwide. That consists of mixed-use development projects, single-family development projects, traditional office buildings, retail centers, apartments, things of that nature. Have done deals in 30-plus states. So have a terrific resume, a broad reach when it comes to experience and depth of experience. I know a question that a lot of people have been asking that we've heard is, well, how many quarries have you guys developed? Certainly some of you are laughing and shaking your heads. That's a question that's out there. We haven't done any quarries. Quarries are rare projects. We've been working on this one for 2 years. So we definitely collectively between the three partners of Community Investment Partners have 2 years of experience working on quarries. But better than that, we've hired the best team to work on quarry projects. Our civil engineers have done half a dozen to 8 quarries, a lot of those in the Northeast and in New Jersey. So our team has a lot of experience. We've hired the best redevelopment counsel that we can find. I think in the meeting on October 24th, one of the members from the community really applauded us for retaining the best counsel and some of the best team members. So we take a lot of pride in what we do. We've tried to be forthcoming with collecting information and gathering information, and we're going to continue to do that. We've made ourselves available to anybody who reaches out to Anthony or myself. We're going to have an email address at the end of the presentation, so if you don't know how to reach us, you can get a way to reach us, and we'll be happy to talk with you guys about your concerns, your ideas, things that you want to see here, things that you don't want to see here. Both of those are tremendously important to us.
Okay. So I think Dave and I want to talk about the environmental a little bit. So transactionally, we will not buy the site until it's remediated. That's our current deal with the quarry owners. So until Joe Sorgi and MQI have completed and have provided a residential characterized site, there will be no transaction on our part. In addition, we couldn't build even if we were to close on the site without that until that process is done and complete. We have, in addition to the Township's consultants that have reviewed, as Joe talked about, co-sampling and went through that whole process years ago, we certainly, for our investors and underwriters, have an extensive team that have reviewed everything that Joe has done, as well as what DEP has reviewed. I don't think there's many people that are more concerned about the environmental, because if we were to complete this transaction, that's going to be our responsibility. And we want to make sure that it meets the needs of the plan. Our first year in the project, or certainly first 9 months, we spent extensively during our due diligence period in evaluating whether we would even pursue this project in understanding the environmental, because we didn't really have a good handle on it. And I know you guys are sort of at the point where we were 2 years ago. And so I'm very sympathetic that you're searching for that same information. And to the extent, again, as David said, that we can provide that directly or in an interactive way, or provide our professionals to give you that information, we will make them readily available so you can have that dialogue.
I just want to add one thing to that as well. And Anthony and I are going to tag team this a little bit. Slightly insulted that I have to look at his back the whole time.
Yeah, just move over.
Otherwise, we're good.
Too close. Sorry, John.
Anthony lives in town. He actually is very proximate to the quarry site itself. He has 3 kids. I myself have 3 little kids. My 5-year-old can't wait to jump into the lake. He wants to be the first one. Hopefully he's wearing his bathing suit. It's something, we do take to heart. We're sensitive to these. We're family people. We've got little kids. Anthony lives right behind the quarry.
No one needs to know where I live.
I'm not going to give you the address, but these are things that we don't take lightly. It's something that's very important to us. It's something that's near and dear to us. we work in this arena. A majority of the deals I do have some form of environmental contamination and undergo some form of remediation. In fact, within New Jersey, I mentioned this the other day to some folks, a lot of the golf courses you play golf at, they're filled with fill. They're actually the stuff that's coming off of contaminated sites. They're putting it under the fairways and greens, putting 2 feet of soil on there and a nice lawn, and you have a golf course. A lot of the waterfront in Jersey City, Hoboken, Weehawken, and West New York, all the way up to Fort Lee, contaminated areas that have been developed on. So it's very common to have a process for remediation and development on top of those sites. And there's strict protocols and procedures, as Joe mentioned, to govern and regulate how that remediation takes place and what you can build and where you can build and things of that nature. So it's very prescribed. And it's governed heavily by NJDEP. I think the state of New Jersey and the state of California probably are the 2 most sophisticated states when it comes to contaminated sites and cleanup of those sites.
And just to clarify, there's no building on contaminated areas on the site.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about the process, and I don't want to repeat what the mayor said, but we were encouraged by the redevelopment process because, again, as a resident, if I was sitting on the other side of this podium, it's the one land use tool that a municipality has in New Jersey where they can really control and be very specific on what the outcome will be and pick a developer that's qualified and go through that process. All the other land use processes really are more driven by the developer coming in with an application. So this is something that allows for a collaborative and a co-creative process that has been going on and hopefully will continue to go on with your participation. So we were encouraged by that process. So I'm going to run through the plan. My own interest in this is it's nearly a 200-acre site. I had a house on Stonehouse Road, or on Valley Road, right down the street from Stonehouse. For 16 years, I lived through the quarry when it was quarrying, and I remember all the truck traffic and noise from that. As Dave has already sort of alluded to my address, I now live within a few hundred feet of the quarry, and I'm on the Passaic River, so I'm in that watershed that is associated with the site. So I do care about it. And we looked at it really very simply from the beginning is, can this be viewed as a community asset rather than just another development? We have 10,000 residential units in all different forms in our community. We have a variety of different commercial assets and corporations. And this is a unique site. It's the largest undeveloped tract in the town. And to have the opportunity to get in there and design it from the beginning rather than having a national developer just come in and try and force their typical product on there or whatever that might be could be a missed opportunity. And I really hope that if a plan is to go forward, that we'll look back in 15 years and 20 years and be glad that we allowed for public access and allowed for trails and open space and amenities that could be used by the greater public, because this is private property and there's no requirement to force that to happen. So it takes a willing participant. It takes a seller willing to sell to a developer that shares that vision. It takes the township to have the leadership and give us clear guidelines on what that needs to look like. It takes investors and marketing forces to put all that together. I'll do this quick. I know you all probably know this, but it has been a quarry for, I think, 130 years. It's been mining natural resources here. So part of the whole change in philosophy is how do we make it a healthy site and how do we reclaim and have biodiversity and habitat and use and access to that. So that's sort of big brushstrokes. This is a recent photograph. Just before I get into the plan, make sure I'm using the same thing. So when we think about the different components, and again, we'll talk about this at the end, we're very open to making modifications to the plan that work. But there's a few buckets that each time we make a decision, there's a force that sort of works with us. One is the township has been really clear about some of the guiding principles that were important to them. Not having a negative tax consequence to either the school board or the township. Having public access that is used for the greater public, but that's privately financed and maintained and managed in a way that is healthy. We then have market forces. We have to design something that can be absorbed in the marketplace, and we're trying to think long term and where's the market going, what are those new buyers going to be interested for, and it may be providing things that currently don't exist in Bernard's, and we'll talk more about that, a product and a typology that's different than what we currently have. The site. this is a challenging site. I mean, it's been mined and quarried. It's a moonscape. And so just to provide basic infrastructure for any development, whether it's single-family homes or mixed use, requires quite a bit of work to get to that point and to just make it healthy and green again. Investors, obviously, there's no investor that won't do this without some returns, but each time we look at those things, that really goes back to the market. Is there something that's marketable? We're really fortunate that we have a capital partner that cares deeply about sustainability and has spent 20 or 30 years working on projects to support those things, and we're fortunate to have that because we don't always have that opportunity. And then the community, and that's you all. And that's why we really want to listen and understand and hope that we can work together to find solutions for whatever the concerns or comments or that you may have. So the big picture of what we've balanced is how to provide all of these public amenities in a way that will increase the value of the real estate, while at the same time providing open space that and amenities that could be used but privately financed and managed. So I'm going to walk you through a few of the different components of the project, and Dave will jump in on any pieces he wants to share. So the site right now is a challenge, as I said. It's a difficult site because it's been quarried, and there's very little opportunity for things to grow there. And there's quite a bit of topography. I think we have a grading plan that we can show you at the end of this if you're interested. But many of you probably haven't seen into the quarry. For as large as it is, it's actually pretty well shielded from the existing vegetation and berms that have been around. I didn't know it was there for years, or certainly didn't realize how big it was until I think 6 or 7 years when I was here. But that topography, dealing with the lake and the lake management all have its challenges, and to provide basic infrastructure. So initially, a lot of our thinking was to use the lake as a primary component and the value and the asset within the community. We don't have a lake that large in our township, and so a lot of when you see the site planning and the type of amenities and shared spaces and trails, all of that is sort of governed by that center asset. And the lake has been filling. If you saw the site recently, there's probably 20 or 30 acres of water already that's been covered. The quarry stopped pumping, I think, sometime in January of this year, so it's filled up quite a bit. And provide access to that, and not just access where you see it, but access where there's opportunities for our community to meet and socially and interact in ways that are meaningful and beneficial. This is a picture of Turtleback Zoo. I just took this because that photograph is about a 50-acre lake, just to give you a sense of the scale of it, because it's hard to imagine when you look at that site, unless you're really down there seeing that lake and how big it is with that beautiful rock outcropping in the back. There's the laser pointer. So I want to talk to you a little bit, and I think this was mentioned at the last meeting, but about conductivity. So one of the guiding principles was to provide a trail system through the site and connect the other neighboring communities that are there. So there's a series of trails, and again, they're marked conceptually on the plan, but there are these dark lines that use this open space and will connect to some of the other areas throughout the site. There's a public park right off to the right here along the Passaic River called Schmidt Park, which is really quite nice. I don't think a lot of people know or use it, but we would hope that we could be part of the fabric of the community and connect so that people can get access to the site and use that trail system. Another component, and again, it doesn't have to be an amphitheater, but we want to provide spaces where the community can gather. I see even with my own teenager where he hangs out, whether it's at a shopping center or someplace else, and working with the high school students over the last few months and hearing what they have, is there's not great places for them to hang out where there's food, there's opportunities, there are concession stands, there's interesting places, so they're loitering or hanging out at some of the shopping centers. And so we'd like to hear from you all, and we've gotten feedback from some of the meetings we've had on what that could look like, and having maybe active adventure and having places to meet and other gathering spaces. So that has not been fully designed, and we'd like to understand what would be useful for you, because you're the consumers and people that would use it. So we hope to participate that. Next is this whole concept of being outside more. Obviously, sustainability, green building, environmental awareness regarding stormwater and biodiversity and soil health, all of those things are really important to our project because we think it will add value to the real estate that's there. We'd like to provide as many indoor-outdoor spaces as possible for people to meet. So Dave will talk a little bit more about the types of retail and the destination retail, but a lot of it is about being outside, having opportunities to have restaurants and farms and activities for our residents. One of the components that we heard from the township, or one of the things that were important, is the view shed along Stonehouse Road. Right now, the existing quarry office and the gates are right about there. Is to not have buildings along Stonehouse Road or minimize those buildings, and providing that really as a sign for us. And that's where we want to have a sustainable farm, where we have community gardens. We believe that that will be a big driver in the retail as well, and having a connection where local food entrepreneurs can have access to local food or work in those gardens, have access to retail, and incorporate agriculture and organic foods to the project. We're doing that because we think, again, that's where the market is. I can tell you from working on another project in town that the buyers that we are seeing, which are relatively young buyers, care very deeply about open space and sustainability and local food and destination food and like eating out and all of those things, and they're willing to invest into that. So to the extent we can weave that into the entire story of the project, that's important.
I'm going to chime in right there because, the question of marketability has come up a lot, at least in the meeting on the 24th. We heard it from a few people. We've heard it from others who have reached out to us. And, an extensive amount of research goes into any development plan. You want to make sure that if you're going to get something approved and build it, there's a consumer who's going to buy it or lease space from you. So we've gone through both at the community investment partners level and the Shop Off Realty Investments level for more than 2+ years, going through and doing market research. What would be viable here? What would meet kind of the criteria with those 5 circles that Anthony outlined, and kind of get us the right mix to satisfy all those forces. And the idea of millennials, people laugh when you hear about millennials. You think that they're 5, 10, 15 years old. The oldest millennial is about 37 right now. 37. I think a lot of you are probably surprised by that. When this project's developed, the youngest millennials will probably be in their mid-20s to early 30s. That's a buyer pool for not just the homes in this development, but the homes that everybody lives in within this community. So we have spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of my time researching where things are going to be, not today, not in 30 days, but in 2 years, and 5 years, and 7 years, and 10 years. And what Anthony was just talking about, the element of food is one of the most important things in consumers' minds right now when they're looking to buy a home. They don't want to live on a golf course anymore. They want to live near a farm. They want to be outdoors. They want to have an experiential lifestyle. They want amenities. They want smaller residences, things of that nature. So when we talk about all these things, there's a lot of research that's gone into kind of the idea behind the vision that we have for this site and what the township has presented in their draft redevelopment plan. The other thing about millennials is it's a vast cohort. There's about 90 million millennials. 90 million. Compare that to boomers, where there's about, I think, 60 to 70 million baby boomers. And the interesting thing is, let's not forget about the baby boomers and those in the middle. The baby boomers actually want smaller residences too, right? They want to downsize. They want to be more active in their lifestyles to extend their lifespan. They want an experiential community as well. So it's interesting when you see the millennials and the boomers that they actually parallel their desires. And boomers don't actually want to live in retirement homes. That may come as a shock to some, but people as they get older, they want to be around younger people. They want to be active. They want to be enlightened. They want to have a community around them that's dynamic. So we look at all this stuff. It's not just what house can we put here and make the most money. We're trying to create a viable community within the greater community here at large that provides not only something that is highly marketable to the folks that are coming up to buy these things, but also makes the rest of the community, the broader township, marketable as well. And I think we've talked about the high school students from a planning perspective, that's really a great tool. You get 120 students and hopefully their parents actively engaged in talking about what they desire. So a lot of the elements that you're going to see here come from those conversations with those students and the conversations that we've had over time and the extensive research that we've been doing on this for a number of years.
I'll talk about the market.
Yeah. So the market, not a big grocery store. We've heard Wegmans. We're not going to put 100,000 square foot Wegmans in here. What we're looking to do here is a smaller private label type market, Trader Joe's type of a concept, if you will. Something along those lines, or a farmer's market, privately owned. Markets are becoming things that are very popular right now. Think of locally sourced produce, locally sourced meat, locally sourced dairy, things of that nature. So I think the market that some people may have in their mind as being another A&P disaster, as somebody said to me once, isn't really what we're looking for here. Smaller scale, private label, likely, one of those markets that I just described that we've actually heard a lot of feedback from people saying they want something like this in their community. So that's the premise behind that idea.
Yeah, and a good reference, that photograph is a place called the Brick Market in Hopewell. And they've really vertically integrated a working sustainable farm, a dining restaurant, as well as a market. And it's pretty small. I think it's only about 10 or 15,000 square feet. But if anyone wants to do some research, I would say that's a pretty good comparable market. And it's done really, really well. You want to talk about this? Yeah, so I think this image was shown before at the last meeting, but again, the concept of having indoor and outdoor spaces and really focusing on destination retail and retail that's focused on food and agriculture as a primary, and all the other supporting boutique and retail that would be along with that.
Actually, I'm going to chime in here because I'm trying to go back to the questions that I heard on the 24th, and one of the things that was brought up on the 24th is we don't need more retail. Retail's dead, right? That's the concept that everybody has. You're buying on Prime. You're buying everything online. I think the most recent statistic I saw was 2016, or maybe it was first half of 2017, sales online were about 8.5%, maybe 9%. So still a vast majority of the retail shopping's done at a shop. It again goes back to an experience. I think my wife always says, I can buy stuff online, but it's not as fun as going to the store and trying things on, and it's an event. So retail is changing. I will say retail is changing. All the bookstores that everybody shopped at 10 years ago, they're gone. They got decimated by Amazon, right? Do you know who's opening brick and mortar stores right now? Amazon. What do they know that we don't know? They see that the experience of shopping is meaningful to people. So the concept of retail here isn't Dollar General. It's not Applebee's or TGI Fridays, as much as I love TGI Fridays. It's boutique. It's local. It's to cater to entrepreneurs in the community that want to open a boutique. It's to housewares and homeware stores that are relocating out of malls from their 7,500 to 10,000 square foot shop spaces and consolidating into towns into 3,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet. And with those smaller footprint stores, they're not having to accommodate as much inventory. I think hopefully all of you have been shopping recently and you go into a store at your mall and you ask if they have a certain size and they say, we do not. But they walk out with an iPad and they say, have no fear, we'll have it delivered to you tomorrow for free. That's omni-retailing, they call it. It's changing the supply chain of retailing. And you're seeing that shopping malls, your stores and shopping malls are shrinking. And they're also moving out of malls and moving into communities. So the retail that we're envisioning here, especially along the boulevard, Anthony, maybe you want to point out where the boulevard is. It's not strip mall retail. It's Main Street retail. It's smaller square. It's something that's much more localized and something that will actually fit into this community. This is approximately 30,000 square feet on each side of the boulevard with, wide, hopefully 10, 12-foot sidewalks to accommodate outdoor dining. So we're looking at boutique retail, smaller footprint stores, an art gallery that would be available to, artists in the local and broader community. In addition to eateries and other types of boutique experiential shopping experiences and services that, again, there's great demand in the marketplace to occupy those types of spaces. Those spaces don't just exist yet, not within this community.
So part of the plan, and again, we got this feedback back from some of our spring meetings, was to provide vibrancy down at the waterfront. One of the things that's unique about this particular site is you can build very close to the water, where in New Jersey, typically you have constraints and buffers and things like that. So it's a rare opportunity. So there's about 20 to 30,000 square feet of retail with boardwalks down at the waterfront. And as Dave said, and don't get stuck on the architecture, these are just character images, but the scale is probably about right, where you'd have a boardwalk on the waterfront with retail there as well, 1 and 2 stories of restaurants and shops, but providing vibrancy and having a certain amount of density that there are people living there and there are people that can use those spaces.
And again, bringing indoor and outdoor space together. And I think the other thing that we're envisioning down by the waterfront is like a community facility. So if you need to have events or meetings or things of that nature, there's a destination at the waterfront to hold those types of events. It could be a corporate meeting, it could be a wedding, it could be a banquet, it could be a Girl Scout troop meeting or a Boy Scout meeting. So we're looking to incorporate, facilities like that again, we've heard from the community that are important to them.
So we're wrapping up soon.
Am I bobbing back and forth? You're raising your hand.
Okay, so it's hard. I hear you. We can wrap up. There's a lot of people here that have reached out to us that are looking for information, and so I'm trying to be respectful to provide that information in a form that you can all hear it. So I have a few more slides. I'd like to complete that for those people, if that's okay. So do you why don't we talk about the hotel?
Sure.
Okay. We're going to. Go ahead. What's up?
Yeah, so the hotel is not a hotel that you know. It's not a Courtyard Marriott. We've done, again, a lot of research, and this question has come up. Why do we need another hotel in town? There's demand for a type of accommodation that we're looking to build here. It's not a traditional branded hotel like the Courtyard Marriott or something that's large. And typical of that type of an establishment. We're looking for a corporate suite hotel. So think of longer-term accommodations for business travelers. There's a number of corporations that are located in your community. Verizon's obviously the largest, but many others that employ hundreds and thousands of employees. And in the broader, county landscape, a number of large corporations that are employing thousands with, I believe, the development pipeline for office is close to 4.5 million square feet of new office that's currently projected in the pipeline. So we're looking to meet a demand for those types of business travelers that maybe need extended accommodations, but also making it available to somebody who needs 1 night or 2 nights as well. It would be short term or long term. I think if you go online now and look at your hotels, the least amount of travel in the year takes place between Thanksgiving and like December 14th or 15th, right after Thanksgiving and right before the Christmas travel season. In your community now at your hotels, your average rates during that period of time are $290 to $300+ for some of the lowest rate rooms. I'd actually venture to guess that 1 or 2 of those hotels may even be sold out during that period of time. So we do a lot of research into this. It's not just throwing a hotel into the mix to have a hotel in the mix. There is demand for this. We spend a lot of time on that, and it's very accretive to the town from an economics perspective. One of the reasons why we're looking at doing mixed use versus strictly residential site is to accommodate, again, going back to those 5 circles, community concerns and township concerns, both with regards to fiscal impacts and other impacts. And the hotel is very accretive or positive to the township from a financial perspective. You looked like you were going to cut me off.
No. Part of lake management.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Highly amenitized, access to the lake. That's something that we've been hearing about for the last 2 years that people want. They want to be able to utilize the beauty of this site. But the township doesn't want to pay for that. Nobody wants to foot the tax bill. So again, having this mixed-use component with residential and commercial with the corporate suites really allows to accommodate the immense cost with regards to infrastructure improvements on the site, but then also the annual maintenance and carrying costs of maintaining the site and all the amenities and the lake itself, so it doesn't become a township cost or a taxpayer cost. Further to that, just to jump into traffic real quick, it also accommodates better traffic flows. If you have all residential units, think about your typical single-family home. Most people are leaving for school or leaving for work at the same time in the morning or within the same peak hours. Having a mixed-use community, it allows to spread some of those peak trips in the morning and the evening, so it's not all coming in at the same time. Think about your retailers that open at 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. The scale of this site as well is something that, I know what's coming when I say this, is fairly appropriate for a community like this. And I see a lot of heads shaking. If you look at the residential density and you take out the lake, right? So it's like 130 acres without the lake, 180 acres with the lake. I think it's 1.8 homes per acre. It's not a highly dense residential site. Certainly there are denser sites. I know recently a neighboring quarry was just approved for a density of 12 units per acre. So we're looking at a density that's much less than that and incorporating in all these commercial components to, again, fit within the 5 circles of, factors we're trying to accommodate here and make sure that it's fiscally positive for the town, working to reduce the stresses of traffic that a strictly residential community may encumber the township with, and provide something that's going to be dynamic that, from our conversations with everybody is something that's desired.
Yeah. So the residential portion of the site is over here, and I'll just want to walk through that a little bit. Primarily, this area is residential because there are existing residential neighborhoods next to the site here. One of the things that we worked with the township planner and our own planners was this concept of very small lots and very small houses in that area, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, it preserves a lot more of the open space in that area, and clustering the homes closer together in these small U-shaped patterns allows for views of those open areas, and they wouldn't be lawn. Most of the area would be in warm season grassland and meadows, and as well as having public trails through those areas as well. We're doing that, and that I think the density there is 47 single-family detached units. We're doing that because we're seeing again and again that that's where the buyers are, particularly the younger buyers, and to Dave's point, older buyers as well, is wanting to downsize, and they don't need a larger home if they have access to other shared amenities. And so by shrinking the size and not doing what you typically will see, which is the largest lot you can with the largest house, we think this is much more marketable, and the absorption rates would be much faster, which is important. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about stormwater management. And again, we could spend a lot of time on this, but not only dealing with the environmental issues through remediation, but we also have to develop ways of how the site will continue to take care of itself and regenerate itself. So we will use a biofiltration system, which is basically the incorporation of new wetlands to treat stormwater. Wetlands are great at treating stormwater. That's why we have rules to not fill them. They act as similar to your kidneys in your body about filtering them. So there will be a series of finger river streams and lakes through the site with constructed wetlands so that all of the runoff goes through a natural biofiltration before it enters into the lake. And there, in some areas, there will be fairly large newly created wetlands at the lake edge as well. In addition to that, we'll create what's called CC&Rs, codes, covenants, and restrictions internally to provide feedback on how people are to maintain their properties, whether it's fertilizers and pesticides, the commercial properties, in a sustainable way so that there's long-term maintenance that will provide a stronger lake management plan. And then I just want to show you what some of these wetland systems look. This is one that is in Bedminster that we had worked on a long time ago. Lastly is this, the concept of community integration. We would hope that we could work with local schools and civic groups. You know, I think we'll hear from a sailing organization, and we heard from Girl Scouts, of having event coordination and using these open spaces for our community. This was a project where we created an environmental curriculum where the kids used the wetlands as living laboratories for science classes. And that's just one small example, but we would want to participate. That's the part that gets me really excited in having this opportunity to have this be part of the larger community and used to the best possible way it can. Do you want to add anything else, or I just want to summarize? Okay. All right, because I know you all want to get to questions. So when we look at this, we look at this as a total package, you know, and I just want to run through some of the things that this project could include, and again, we're open to feedback on how it could be improved. The big thing to summarize is public access. There's no requirement for this site to have public access, and not just public access that's open space, access that can be really used by our community. The fiscal positive, both providing a return to an investor so it's a viable project, but also not be a burden to the taxpayer. Diversity of housing. We're using studio apartments, smaller homes, townhouses, designing them in a sustainable way to provide alternatives to existing housing stock and meet the market demands that we think are trending in that direction. Providing a public park. I think it's seven or so acres in the center, as well as an open space down by the river. It again would be privately financed and managed, but accessed by the public. A network of trails and that provide access to the site through the neighboring communities. A working sustainable farm and community gardens. This is a huge economic development project for our community, which will create jobs and lots of economic development for our local businesses. Sustainability, as you've heard again and again, is really important to all the members of this group and our team. And we hope this would be a catalyst for our community if it's going to continue to evolve and change, that they would look at some of the sustainability elements as a positive way of how to deal with those issues. Open space. There is a substantial amount of open space on the site, which I'll show a slide maybe later if we have more time, of all the different components and what is open space versus built areas. Live and work. You know, I think one of the comments from the public at the last meeting was someone who has been in town for a while and has moved from different residences and have kept his business and moved his business through that. And that was really appealing. That's certainly been my own personal story, you know, and having 2 homes in town and having my business here at my starter house. That was important to be able to have options to grow with my family and within our community and keep our business and provide more opportunities for others to do that. Lake management. It's no small undertaking to have a highly biologically healthy lake, and to have enough of an economic engine through development to do that and pay for that in the long term is a big part of the plan. It's now 9:10, and we need an opportunity to speak. All right, that's all I ask. Yeah. I'm finished.
We will have plenty of time for public comment. Let them finish their presentation.
Listen, the good news is I have 2 more comments and I'm done. Okay? So, you're welcome. So, as one of some of the feedback we had was active adventure and having options for our teens and younger people to congregate on the site in a safe way. And then incorporating other forms of transportation, bike share, car share, et cetera. We've talked to some of the local businesses about that, and we've gotten some encouragement. And these are all small examples of some of the things that could be incorporated in the site. We're excited to hear your comments and feedback, and we hope that this is working towards a solution for this site so it doesn't end up being something that you don't want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask my colleagues now to step back up on the dais.
Just turn this off.
And yeah, let me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read the public comment statement once I get back up there. but please feel free to come forward. You'll need to sign in. You'll need to state your name and address for the record, and then direct your questions up to the dais, and then we will hopefully have the experts be able to answer as many questions as possible tonight. If we don't get to everything tonight, we will continue it at the next meeting.
Just have 15 minutes of business.
Okay. What?
You're going to reiterate the 5 minutes.
First, I need to read the statement. Comments are welcome during the public comment period during this meeting on any agenda item or other matter over which the Township Committee has jurisdiction. However, if an ordinance is listed for its own public hearing on the agenda, please hold your comments for that particular public hearing. To address this body, the speaker must come forward to the microphone, state his or her name and address for the record. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The clerk will keep time. Please promptly yield the floor when time is called and return to your seat. Your cooperation in adherence to these rules of order will ensure an orderly and respectful meeting. And the Deputy Mayor just had a really good idea, which is we are going to stop at 10:15 to do our other business that we need to conclude before 10:30, but that will only take about 15 minutes. So if there are still further questions after that, we will then continue with this portion because that would technically not be new business. Right, Denise? Okay. So that is what we'll do if we can't get through all the questions by 10:15. Okay, so is anyone coming up for public comment or question? Is that me?
Hello, Al Licata, former mayor, former township committee member. I live on East Oak Street here in Basking Ridge. How did we get to this point? When I left office, along with fellow colleagues along the way, we left the quarry after years of discussion about the quarry coming to an end and their operations ending, with 2-acre zoning, the property owner responsible for the environmental cleanup, and the property owner responsible for setting up a sinking fund to take care of the pit, which you call a lake, into perpetuity. Now we have the Township Committee involved in massive, compressed, dense development in the center of our heartland on the last biggest piece of property in the township. I guess if you use the old adage, if you build it, they will come. Maybe they'll come, maybe they won't. I have a couple of concerns. After the last meeting we had, I went and checked the available retail and office space availability in Basking Ridge and Bernardsville. There's almost 2 million square feet of available office space and commercial space available right now between the two towns. Before this meeting I came and I checked again, I found another property available with 4,900 square feet in Bernardsville that can be zoned for restaurants, banks, retail. Another 1,000 square feet of retail office space in Basking Ridge. A new listing for 1,400 square feet and 2,700 square feet in Basking Ridge for office, medical use, and retail. We have the space available right now. I'm sure that the boutique shopping, unlike Apogee or Gallery of Bliss, will do much better in town. If you've ever shopped at Apogee, and she'll tell you she's having a hard time right now because of Amazon and online shopping, gentlemen, or the Gallery of Bliss woman, Robin, who told you that now she's working at home selling her goods online because it's cost effective. But maybe there's other businesses out there, and I said that at the last meeting, maybe there are some destination businesses that may work. Me, I want to go on record and tell you that I'm dead set against this rezoning. Keep the zoning the way it is. Keep the quarry owner responsible for the environmental issues and taking care of that pit. Work with the Mahan family and see if we can get a park out of it. Work with our county and state people to see if we can get some money for open space. I don't know why you let the open space tax lapse, but maybe this is the reason, but we've got a AAA bond rating. That AAA bond rating is in place, so if we ever want to decide to buy something, we could get great interest rates. This is the piece of property that generations of residents will benefit from for decades. Buy it. Seal it as open space. We'll pay it off over time. No more kids in the school system, and not that I'm against the schools. We built this beautiful PAC center because we need it for events like this now. Also, if this is built, you're going to kill our volunteer fire and first aid squads. And I'm telling you right now, if you choose to outsource our first aid or fire to private companies, that is a tax increase to the residents of this town. Insurance companies don't cover the cost of picking you up and providing medical service to the hospital. One ride alone will cost a resident anywhere from $2,000 to $12,000 plus for just one ride to the hospital. 200 homes, a 250-room hotel, that's because they need a liquor license. They can't get a liquor license without that many, over 100 rooms. I'm imploring you to do the right thing. Sometimes we get into the machinations where we're thinking we're doing the right thing and what's best for Bernards. This is bad for Bernards. Just stop, take a deep breath, realize that the residents are speaking. Look, trust me, I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm very pro-business. This is bad for Bernards. We have 7 commerce centers. Enough is enough. We need to slow down the process, like John said during the campaign, and really say, is this what we need? 2-acre zoning, you got 40-some-odd homes. On 2-acre zoning, I have to say that some of those families might be predisposed to send some of those kids to private schools like Del Barton, like Pingree, like Purnell, Seton Hall Prep, taking those numbers out of the school system. I think you'll deal with a lot less kids in the school system then than you would at a massive project like this. Anyone that drives down through the Cedar Spring Ridge, you'll know that sometimes you can get 4 kids into an apartment complex with 2 bedrooms. You've campaigned, you know they're in there. It'll happen here. People move to this town because of the school system. That's why they come here. I'm baptized here. We're dumb. You stay and pay the taxes, son. My family, my parents live on Oak Street. My other relatives reside at 2 special locations up off of Mount Airy Road. My daughter is a 6th generation.
At your time.
Please, take a step back, do what's best, listen to the residents, shelf this project. Thank you.
My name's Todd Edelstein, Riverside Drive.
Excuse me, did
Let's
you
get down
sign
to
in,
business,
Mr. Edelstein? Mr. Edelstein, did you sign in? I just want to remind the public to sign in.
Please pull number 6 on the agenda, consent agenda. I'd like to know exactly where these blinkers are going to be on Allen Road, since it's not in the resolution there.
Todd, I couldn't hear you. What number did you say?
Number 6, that would be 20170393.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Number 7.
Looking at the calendar that you gave of when this started, all I can say is I was probably the first and only person who stepped up over a year ago and said I wasn't for this. So having all these people here, it's new and it's interesting. But I said then I don't think we should have it. I don't think the town should get involved in the private business. They're in there to make money, and that's all well and good. That's why they bought it. They thought they were going to make money. Or maybe they thought they could get the town to do the redevelopment that'll save them money to make money. But I still don't think we should be involved in it. I think that it could have done by zoning. I think it should be zoned commercial. Commercial, you don't have children. Commercial, you'll add jobs and actually do something for the economy. It's walled off, over 180 acres in there. So probably only a handful of people have ever been in that property, and they wouldn't miss it for one bit. It'd be like being on the moon. So saying, well, it'll be open space, no one's going to miss it. No one's dying to climb over those hills to get down to it. That being said, with all these people here, I just think it's wrong when somebody's giving a presentation, and I'm not for this, but let the man have his presentation, and then he can ask questions later. I've been coming to meetings since William Holmes was mayor, and I think it's rude for people to yell and scream from the audience, and it's wrong. You just wait and you get your questions. If you had questions, you could have came to these meetings for over a year and asked these questions. And I'm sure you either got an answer you want to hear or you would have gotten no answer. And then you can come back to the next meeting and ask again like I do and be a pain in the butt. I know I'm a pain in the butt, and if God forbid I'd be up there because I'd be dreading to see somebody like me come up and ask the questions. But the truth is, somebody's got to come and somebody's got to ask the questions. And if you sit and you only come in one big group, it means nothing. You come all the time, you ask the appropriate questions. That being said, I don't think the meeting from November 13th should have been canceled. I think when we have 30 consent agenda things, we could have had a meeting and gone through that. You just advertise it. That's not the meeting for this. And it would have been easy. And you wouldn't have all these angry people here. And I hope, take a breath. This is going to be a long process. I don't agree with everything, but I'm going to sit and take a breath and listen to it all. And I hope everybody else does. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd.
Number 3.
Sorry, I'm too short. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. It's like the child microphone. Cho Shear. I've been a resident for 20 years. I came here in my 20s. I'll let you do the math, but I'm not a millennial. I spent 12 years in the Hills, which has about 1,800 homes, with restaurants, one way in and out of that neighborhood, and have lived in homes that the neighborhoods range from 70 to 198 homes within just that the single neighborhoods within the 1,800 homes. I now live in a community where there are 8 homes on single family homes on 2-acre lots. So when I first heard about this, I'll admit I had no idea what this was before October, and I was a little surprised and, didn't know any of the details coming into the October meeting. So not for any fault of the Township Committee or of the developer, I believe it was my own fault, because I just didn't pay attention. I'm signed up for the emails. You know what? Life happens, and unless it's in front of your face, I just didn't pay attention. So, I own that. However, I then afterwards felt like, okay, I need to understand what's going on with this, because my community directly connects to the proposed plan. So my initial reaction was, no, 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 this cannot happen. This is not a good thing for us. I then spent the last month reaching out to committee members, reaching out to the developer, I guess, who all very readily complied with answering my questions, and, any information that I needed, it was sent over to me. So, I think that there were other comments made that, information was not forthcoming. I can tell you that I didn't know any of these people outside of, maybe Carol, because our sons wrestled together, but not on any level did I know anybody here. I reached out, and every single one of them responded to me that I reached out to. So, I wanted to get that on the record. Secondly, then relative to the previous plan, which is the 40 homes on the 2-acre lots. Well, let me tell you, I live in a neighborhood of 8 homes, and it took the developer 9 years to sell those homes. I was, I think, maybe person number 3. I've lived in that development for 8 years. Those homes don't sell. So I don't know who is saying that they think the 40 homes will sell on the 2-acre lots, because I'm telling you they don't. I live in that community that's on a much smaller scale. So I am against the 40-acre, the 42-acre lots that is currently zoned now, and I think that the current plan that's out there is better. And based on the research that I have spent the last month, which seems almost like a second, part-time job for me. So let's see. So I think, people will say, well, who cares if the Mahans don't, get this and, we should just let it sit and, so on and so forth. Well, I think, history has shown with this particular homeowner or these owners that they have they like to litigate, right? I mean, something doesn't go their way, they litigate with the township. And, there's been a dozen or so suits. I don't know what the actual number is. So, the possibility of them coming back and, trying to get I think it's called a builder's remedy, I think is very possible. That happened in the hills that I lived in that, has now 1,800 homes. I think it's going on in Dewey Meadows now. And I think it just happened to Bernardsville. The Bernardsville quarry, which now I understand happened 2 weeks ago on their 28-acre quarry. They've now reached an agreement, which is going to come up, I think, in December before Judge Miller, that they're going to eventually build 340 homes on the 28 acres, 51 of those which will be affordable units, from the article that I read. So, I think it's a very real risk out there, and I think we have to be proactive in ensuring that, we get a plan that, we can all live with. Maybe it's a compromise to us. So just in closing real quick, if we can consider the over 55 community, in there somehow, I think that would be great. And, I think as the plan is being developed, please continue with the communication between the township and with the developers. And then, just please consider the perimeter neighborhoods that are part of, that will be, backing up or, going into the new plan. We still want to keep our privacy. We want to keep the aesthetics of, what makes our developments valuable as well. But I support the plan, and I think it's good. So, what I say to all my neighbors and those sitting here is, we are all neighbors here. We're friends, many of us. And I think that, let's be collaborative in our approach. Let's be positive and not so negative. And let's just be respectful. So, I think, that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else for public comment?
It's right where it belongs. Hi, I'm Eric Russell. I live in Spring Ridge. I had a chance to talk with Anthony before the meeting, and he said explicitly that they would be addressing the question of the hotel. We're not Atlantic City, and when they overdeveloped Atlantic City with too many hotels, as you've seen lately, more than a few of them have gone belly up. I really don't think we need that capitation. I used to work in hospitals, and unless they had 90% capitation, they were losing money. Anthony says we can do okay with 65%, I think?
I didn't say that for us. I said that the other.
Okay. But, the thing is, you're dealing with a location that's going to be getting a lot of traffic, and it's already pretty bad during rush hour. If it goes belly up, who's going to be responsible for maintaining the property? The entire development is below grade. When you look at the map, I don't see any sign of a pumping station there for sewage. And that's an important thing that has to be there. As Anthony says, I've got two groups that are interested in providing recreational services. One is a canoeing group for public canoeing. One is a club that teaches people the other one is a club that teaches people how to sail. And because of safety issues and insurance, for the sailing thing, they would have to become members of the club, which is not expensive. In both of the meetings that I've been able to attend before now, I've been told that this is a collaborative process. Why haven't I been called to help collaborate? I've got experience in this, in waterfront development explicitly, but also in planning layout. One of the things that the first gentleman up mentioned was emergency services. And one of the things I learned back when I was a kid is that if you've got limited access, it's going to cost a heck of a lot for fire insurance. A heck of a lot. I mean, it's, because you've got limited access there, you've got a situation where the road right outside the entrances to this thing get jammed up very easily. You're looking at potential trouble. I do want to see development there, but I think more thinking has to be done.
Thank you.
Okay, I thought I was. Go ahead.
John Gray, Acken Road. As an environmentalist, I've obsessed over the quarry development and its 47-acre lake. That's 42 football fields, or 4 times the size of the lake at Chung Circle. I've read the reports from geologists, environmentalists, and multi-use specialists. I've looked into algae and aquatic vegetation abatement and insect control, all to maintain a pristine and picturesque focal point for a residential and public development in private ownership. I finally stopped and asked myself, why? What are we doing? This is like putting lipstick on a pig. MQI has run the quarry for decades. They've extracted rock worth millions. Then they got paid more millions for allowing thousands of truckloads of questionable fill to be dumped in the pit. They covered and hopefully sealed all of that crap. We, the township, don't owe MQI anything. Why are we jumping through hoops? The citizens of this township elected a township committee to manage the town's affairs for the benefit of all of our residents, not for the benefit of one landowner. The solution can be simple. We do not spend another cent on studies. We support a new, simple, one-page zoning change resolution. Admittedly, the quarry is in private ownership, and they can do what they want with it, within the constraints of zoning. It was a mining industrial zone. It should be returned to that classification, considering the hidden industrial waste buried on site with the knowledge of the owners. Allow the lake to do what it wants, and it will eventually stabilize. The owner could contract with a solar energy corporation to develop and manage a 100-acre solar farm, then sit back and receive a steady flow of income. The site is already fenced and visually buffered by berms and vegetation. There would be no visual impact. After a couple of years of light construction, no noise, no traffic impact, no impact on our schools, no impact on the sewer authority, no impact on township services, no competition for our retailers, hotels, and office space. And just like other open space in town, no increase in housing or population density. Someday a new generation might want to revisit the lake or waterfowl sanctuary or bog for passive recreation. That would be fine, but not necessary, and in no big hurry. If there really is concern for affordable housing under COA, the quarry is not the place, nor is Dewey Meadow. The most logical place is adjacent to the Lions Mall. The small standalone office building on the southeast corner of the property could be replaced with a transit village, small retail shops, and possibly a decent medical facility on the ground floor with 3 or 4 floors of small, modestly priced residences. It's a great location. Train station, bus terminal, grocery store, drugstore, dental clinic, bank, all things that Dewey Meadow lacks. Plus several nice restaurants and the best pizza in the area. And all with little visual impact. And finally, there are many residents of the township with significant training, knowledge, abilities, experience, and insight that could be advantageous to the community if they were only invited to participate in the discussion and formulation of the quarry solution. Just holding a big gathering and listening to the public vent is not the same as community involvement in decision making. A quarry task force needs to be reestablished with the citizen input. What's the rush? Who benefits from railroading this present mess of a plan through? certainly not the folks sitting behind me. Thank you.
Stone. Could you repeat that, sir, please? Hi, Roger Marion, 225 Stonehouse Road. I came tonight with an open mind and with open ears to hear what you had to say. When I stood before you last time, I had really just a few questions. Unfortunately, I didn't hear any of those answers tonight. One was traffic. I heard the comment that people coming in to open the stores are going to come in a little bit later. But I didn't hear about the 400 plus cars that will be added to our rush hour for people living there going out to their jobs. So I still haven't heard any answer to the traffic problem, nor have I heard the promise of a traffic study that I think has to be entered into before any plan could ever be decided upon. The second issue is the schools. Last time we were here, the mayor said that there was a study that showed about 106 new school kids. That, as far as I can see, is 4 to 5 new classrooms and $200,000 a year in added teachers' expense. I haven't heard who's picking up the tab on that. Adding 4 new classrooms would seem rather expensive, and none of that was answered tonight. Now, I also heard a comment from the two gentlemen who gave their presentation that someone wants their son to have fun jumping in that quarry lake. But 2 minutes before that, I heard that the asphalt is leaching into the groundwater arsenic. Arsenic, of course, being a carcinogenic element that will be concentrating in the lake. I'm not sure I want to swim in that, and I want to know what's being done to control that. That's a natural part of our local environment, our local geology. Everyone who has a well has some sort of arsenic control. If that is only going to lose water through evaporation, it's going to be a concentrated arsenic soup, I think, unless someone can tell me a way that that's being remediated. Finally, I have one question that I'd really like to hear answered, which is what is the timeline on this? If this actually does get railroaded through with no changes, when is the first unit going to be sold? 1 year, 10 years, 20 years? We'd really love to hear that number. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Kevin Orr, 28 Squire Court. I also came tonight with many questions that have not been answered. The first question I have is, why is the township not sending this entire proposal to the planning board pursuant to NJSA 40A 12A-7F? That is the provision where it allows the planning board to conduct hearings where people like all of us are able to have the witnesses placed under oath, have the public ask questions, get answers, present evidence for and or against the plan. Not doing so promotes small meetings outside of the public eye where committee members are meeting with neighbors, and that causes and makes neighbors distrust other neighbors. Neighbors feel promises are being made that certain roads won't go through certain areas, and that makes other neighbors feel, well, maybe it's going to go through my neighborhood. If there was an open public forum, that could be eliminated. You won't be pitting neighbor against neighbor. That's not what this should be. We'd be able to hear how the environmental issues would be resolved. We'd be able to understand the school impact and fully discuss COA and how the COA requirements are being met in other areas of our community. We'd better understand the traffic issue. We'd better understand the impact of light and sound on neighbors. We've heard nothing about that at all tonight. There are many other issues as well that could be addressed in that forum. Why is it not being done? Another question I have is, when did quarry operations cease? We've heard varying reports on this. There are legal ramifications as it relates to the importance of this, and while I appreciate there being FAQs placed on a township website, that has no legal impact or ramification because there's no finding by this body that that's a fact. And who supplied the fact? Where does it come from? On that particular question of when did quarry operations cease, the only thing the public has is David Banish's, or it might have been Frank, I apologize to the Banish brothers, a report that states that it occurred on October 31st, 2016. Now, that's important, again, because the quid pro quo for quarry operations, as all of you know, is that once that happens, the obligation to conduct rehabilitation commences. So the follow-up question is, when did the rehabilitation work end? Now, I have seen because I Oprah'd the inspection reports and just learned that quarry rehabilitation has not yet ended. There's an inspection report from Princeton Hydro dated October 27, 2017, which says that the majority of the grading process required for reclamation is now complete, but it doesn't say it is in fact complete. Why am I saying that? That goes right to the crux of this body's potential finding down the road as to whether or not this is a blighted area that redevelopment law should be used for. I don't think that finding that this land has been vacant in a developable state for 10 years has been met. And I think that there are many people out here that might very well want to challenge that in a subsequent court finding if this proceeding goes forward. Our next question is, when were the operational features of the quarry, that is to say the pump settling pond, removed? Mr. Splendorio, who was not under oath tonight, says that he thinks it was in January of 2017. We have a Princeton Hydro inspection report, which I got through Oprah, not through the the town's website. We have to seek this information. It suggests that it occurred prior to April 10th, 2017. Why is this important? This is important because I have been saying since I was a member of the planning board that once those operational features are removed, the LSRP who's here tonight had testified, he said this in many reports, that the pond becomes an open surface water body. That means different testing has to happen. So one of my other questions then is, with regard to the environmental issues stated in the LSRP report, the most recent one from September 2017, he stated that the township consultant confirmed that the compounds detected are not mobile and do not exceed NJDP's default groundwater impact standard. Yet neither the town nor the expert LSRP discloses who that expert was. They don't disclose when did they perform the analysis. They don't disclose did the review of the 2017 test results from pit MW2R, which included the carcinogen pentachlorophenol, were those evaluated? Were those disclosed? Nothing's been said about that. Not to mention all of the other heavy metals which are found in exceedances of the recommended levels. I would like to be able to ask that the waiver, that I have a couple of more important questions. The proponent was allowed of the quarry to ask. Thank you. The next question is, why did the LSRP fail to identify that the surface water body, which has been forming since either January, if you accept Mr. Splendorio's unsworn testimony, or April 2017 in the Princeton Hydro report, not get disclosed in the September 2017 report to the NJDEP? There was actually no reference to that, which begs the question, does the NJDEP even know that there's a surface water body been forming at this site? Next question, the fact is, the LSRP testified before the planning board, and we have the transcript here tonight, on December 20th, 2011, and that's Mr. Sorgi, that 35% of the 50-acre lake will cover the 45 acres of contaminated soil. Why has this long-known fact not been disclosed to the NJDEP in any of the NJDEP filings? Next question. The LSRP stated in the remedial action work plan for the site fill soils area dated September 2010 that because the quarry had a settling pond that was an operational feature of the quarry, it was not considered a surface water body, and that's what I've just stated to you as well. But he went on to say, but that would change once the pond ceased to be an operational feature such that, and this is what his recommendation was, quote, a comparison of the water quality in the settling pond to the surface water standard should be completed, end quote. That has not been conducted. In fact, that recommendation was removed from the 2012 report, and it is nowhere to be found in the 2017 report. Why was that recommendation changed? Last question. Why is the township rewarding the polluter who contaminated 45 acres, 25% of the site, by proceeding with a plan that gives them an undisclosed amount of money. They were careful to slide 35% of the contaminated fill under the lake, basically so they can have more buildable lots. If you look at the plan that they submitted in 2008, they had 40 lots. When you remove 25% of that, it's approximately 30-some-odd lots. Why are we rewarding the polluter? After the meeting, anyone within 200 feet, we have a petition to sign for the NJTEP to become involved. I'll be outside.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Richard Huckins, 67 Woodstone Road. I'm a former planning board member and sat through almost all of the quarry hearings. And I'm also a former environmental consultant for 12 years, working up to national level environmental consulting firms that included remediations of sites up to the Superfund NPL level. So I'm very familiar with the site remediation standards. I have written quite a few of these reports. I know the format. I understand the comments. I am a chemist by training, and but like I said, a lot of environmental experience. So I'm really just zeroing in on this report and considering the current environmental standards. I'm worried about what happens 50 years from now. That soil, 3.5 million cubic yards of soil was brought in. It consisted of construction debris, underground storage tank soils, old industrial plants. It came from all over the tri-state area, and there was a report that was done that we need to get a copy of that documented the people that sent those materials to the quarry. And many of those people were connected with organized crime and other kinds of situations. So if they wanted to hide stuff in that soil, they did it, okay? And there is the fill area has up to 200 foot deep. It's a wedge, 3.5 million cubic yards. And as I recall, 1/3 of the soil boring areas had to be abandoned because as the borings went down, they hit rebar, concrete, wood, other materials they could not drill through. So they stayed away from those areas. What is under those areas? And then also, we've got to consider what the very flippant nature of this analysis of this site. I'm sorry, I'm not an LSRP, but I understand environmental site investigations. 3 wells on 45 acres does not an investigation make. Besides that, they're installed in December and removed in April. 5 months. We don't even have any kind of a window on that. And there was only 3 wells that were installed, and not a one of them is in the area of contamination. The one well that was sort of in that area was off to the side. It wasn't in the middle of the site. My guess is it wasn't put there because of concern over hitting all that construction debris that's in there. So, and then I want to direct our, the thoughts to the interface between the lake water and the soil. They're proposing to put red rock in there. Red rock does not provide hydraulic barrier. Water dilutes. Any contaminant that's in the soil is eventually going to be in that lake. What is going to be the value of all those retail and all those homes when that lake is contaminated? And there will be migration in that material. This is a completely inadequate analysis of what was in there, and we do not have any kind of an idea of protection. This needs a physical barrier between the soil and the lake that will last there forever. That can be made with clay. There's geotechnical fabrics and other kinds of materials. I've seen all the way up to slurry wall asphaltic barriers be put up. The technology exists. It's not even that expensive.
The former site owner, I guess you call him former, I don't know what you call him now, refused to put that into the plan, even though as a board member I asked for that repeatedly. So we get no protection, and this plan does not address that. We will have contamination, and the value of that site for real estate, commercial, residential will become zero once it becomes contaminated. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Stephen Krause, 17 Regent Circle, and I just have some comments on the economic viability of this type of project. First of all, Stonehouse Road is one lane in each direction. Access to this site will simply be lousy. We've heard earlier that there's over 1 million square feet of empty office and commercial space currently in Basking Ridge and Bernardsville. If you add Bedminster, Warren, and Long Hill, there are no doubt additional million square foot of empty space. And there's a question as to why that space is all empty and why this particular space will be where everybody goes. We have hotels in Basking Ridge and Warren. They are not totally full. I don't understand why the hotel that is proposed for this project is going to be where everybody goes. What is unique about this hotel? There's no liquor license available for restaurant use. If we expect, again, people to go to these restaurants, why are they going to go to these particular restaurants? What are these restaurants going to have that other restaurants in this area do not have? And we also hear that the target audience for the people who will live in this development are empty nesters and millennials, presumably people without cars who will be commuting by mass transit. And the mass transit in this area is also lousy. We have New Jersey Transit, who, other than during rush hour, runs one train an hour to New York City. And it takes between 69 and 115 minutes just to get to New York Penn. And once you're at New York Penn, then you've got to go wherever you're going. And coming back from New York, we again have one train an hour. Apparently coming back from New York is a little faster. It's 67 to 94 minutes. Most of the trains during the week run during the rush hours, either in or out. On the weekend, it's just one train an hour. Lakeland Bus also runs service, again, just into the city. That service only runs during rush hour Monday to Friday. I think that there are 5 buses that go from the Lions bus stop, which is the stop closest to the quarry, in the morning. And there are 10 buses that come back in the evening. These take 60 minutes. If you expect people to live in this development without a car and go someplace, they're going to have to find another way to go. The proposed developers said that they had spoken with some folks who were going to put together some kind of shared ride service. It's unclear as to whether that will actually exist, what it will cost, who will be responsible for it. And then the question comes up about the schools. I took a look on the Basking Ridge Schools website this afternoon, and there is an enrollment and forecast proposal there. It was dated December 16, 2015, and what it shows is that enrollment in the schools peaked in the 2013-2014 school year at about 5,763 students. And they projected a decline of over 500 students for the 2018-2019 school year. So if we do have our 40 single-family homes and we have 4 kids in each of those 40 homes, we're not going to hit 500 students. So it appears that there's not going to be an increase in cost for the schools if we have more children. And then there's been a great deal of talk about recreational boating. It's unclear to me whether this is supposed to be power boating, sail boating, but in any event, if we're going to have a 50-acre lake with recreational boating, somebody's going to have to fish the people out of the lake. which probably means that we're going to have a marine unit in the police department. So if there's going to be 24-hour coverage, that'll be 3 officers and a boat. If somebody falls in, we can't call the state police and ask them to send some boat from down the shore to come up to Basking Ridge. So that is a cost that has to be brought in. Also, if we have power boats, there's going to be fuel that has to be dealt with. It's going to be sold. Somebody's going to have to take care of it. It's going to spill into the lake. Somebody's going to have to clean it up. There's going to be sewage generated by these recreational boats. There's going to be garbage generated by these boats. And then in my last 10 seconds, I will say that the town, while we can manage our own money, we have apparently a AAA bond rating and no debt, we do a lousy job of managing developers. We did a lousy job with the quarry over the last decade. We did a lousy job in Dewey Meadow. We did a lousy job with the mosque. We shouldn't try and manage developers. They have their own interests, which are not the same as ours. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Clay, Thackeray Drive. Not as smart as a lot of the other people. I don't have a lot of numbers. I'm just going to talk from the heart. My parents built on Thackeray Drive in what was a new development with Keats Road in Highland in 1960. I grew up in that area. I've jumped off the cliff and I have swung in the pit. I learned to ice skate on the ponds up in the quarry when it wasn't open and it was trespassing, and I got chased and I got arrested many times for trespassing in the quarry. It was an idyllic life. If you think about what they're selling, this was Basking Ridge a long time ago. This doesn't reflect the Basking Ridge that I see today. This trend, the new idea of farm to table, it was called Barty's Farm. It was called Scarano's Farm. My parents moved here because it was a farming community, because housing was affordable. So the millennials are on to something. But Barty's Farm is a housing development built in 1982, and Scarano's Farm is some corporate headquarters and a Starbucks. We had our shot at having all of these local farm things. They're all housing developments now. I don't think we need another one. I know that that's not the planning future of Basking Ridge, is to go back and have, the horse-drawn carriage idea. But town wasn't too bad when there's a lot more dirt roads. So there's a plaque up there. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. It references Mr. Schmidt, which the developers talked about. He was the man that started the Millington Quarry Company. It was Mr. Schmidt's intention that the land he owned between the Passaic River, between the two bridges and Pond Hill Road, was set aside as park. And there's a 4-foot rock with a huge plaque dedicating from his family in 1966 about the parkland up there. It sounds like in 1966, him and his estate, they did a pretty good job setting apart land, because the park area is beautiful. The Passaic River, there's only one of them. We've only got one chance for this. The millennial thing, I'm a retail executive. All this great outdoor retail when there's snow on the ground doesn't work. People aren't walking around there. It's great outdoor cafes and the rest of it. I think of a place like Natterar and 90 acres. We don't necessarily need another one of that. But the town up there looked and they said, how do we preserve all this open space? How do we preserve all of this beauty? If there's one thing Basking Ridge and the kid who grew up in this high school learned, we're overflowing with history. Let's learn from it. We're overflowing with nature's bounty. Why are we trying to tear up more and more of it? I grew up in the woods that there was probably 5,000 to 6,000 more trees there. They're all gone. When was the last time we planted trees? We deforested all of that property, from Stonehouse, South Maple, the old Livingston property. There's a bunch of estates there now. All of that stuff is gone. So what do we want to stand for? Are we going to be another community that's just going to keep cutting down trees, keep developing? Not to keep people out, but why do we need more people here? And to the point, because I am in retail, mentioning more towns. Look at the open shops in Chatham and Madison and everywhere else. That nobody's dying to open up brick and mortar. The idea of, and I go to Hopewell and I go to the brick market and stuff like that, and that works, but for every one that works, there's 10,000 that don't. I don't see it. And why the town wouldn't preserve this land as open space, the pictures are beautiful, the wildflowers and the trees and everything along the water. Why don't we want that to be the showcase of our community? It's just crazy to me that we're not thinking that way. We've only got one shot with this. I don't know why we're blowing it. It just comes down to the money. What's the town get out of it? I know what the developers get out of it, but I don't know what the citizens get out of it. I think it's just crazy. I think somewhere we went so far off the path with this. We have 200 acres. Why not preserve it? It's just, the town's been in the newspaper. The town's got national attention lately. One of them was for an old tree in the center of town. That's nature. The other thing is a great documentary that's on the New Jersey stations about the Great Swamp. Great documentary. The beautiful thing is, if you lived through it in the 60s and the 70s, you realize we're not part of an airport that they wanted to put there. So I think for the committee members, this is our chance. Let's take a stand and let's look and say, we don't need it. Borrow the money, buy the land. Keep it a park.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Mark Williams, 48 Dexter Drive. I just have one question, and that is, has the Township Committee considered what is the worst case scenario if things fail? And how is that going to impact all the taxpayers of Burnett Township?
Hi, Eric Heineman, 15 Heath Drive. Just three quick questions. One is, how much is the property worth right now as 2 acres? The planning board report said on January 17th that it's unlikely the property will be developed if we didn't have the redevelopment plan. So I'm thinking that this land is practically worthless if you are saying that it needs to have this redevelopment plan. The second thing is the town only looking at revenue neutral plans? Or are you able to look at plans to purchase a property? Or have you thought about maybe doing a 100-year lease? Lease the property from the people for 100 years. You can only pay, if you paid them $255,000 a year for 100 years, you'd be paying the owner $20 million, and that would be a third of the price that we said that as developed as 2 acre properties. We said it would be $800,000. It'd be a lot cheaper. It'd be very inexpensive to do. The third thing is, have we asked the owner to donate the property? If the property is only worth $10 million, when the new tax law goes into effect, there's very little downside to the owner. If he sells it and he donates it, he'll come basically to the same spot. Those are my three questions.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Ann Parsekian, Berta Place. First, at the October 24th meeting, Mayor Gaziano said that a development of 50 homes at 2 students per home would result in a net negative of $800,000. And she asserted that a mixed-use development of the size and type proposed for the quarry could generate, according to her, 105 to 128 students, but that there would be 2.3 to 2.8 million in positive net revenue for the town. I hope that Mayor Gaziano or anybody can explain how she calculated that the proposed plan would result in $2.3 to $2.8 million of positive net revenue, and what percentage of that would go to the Board of Education. By my calculation, using the mayor's $8,000 negative per student, her estimate of 105 students would result in a net negative of $840,000. 128 students would result in a net negative of $1,024,000. And for another example, 235 students, or one student per home, which is half of the mayor's figure of 2 students per home, would result in a net negative to the schools of $1,880,000 per year. Second, my point about that first thing is that none of the positive net revenue would not be going to the school board if you are using pilot payments. Instead, the residents are going to have to come up with additional revenue for the schools to cover those, any students. Second, a significant difference between the current process and the regular land use application process is that in the current process there has been no sworn testimony and no one has been qualified as an expert. It is troubling to think that residents are expected to believe at face value whatever they are told by people who have no demonstrated expertise and may have significant financial interest in the project. Third, Township committee members have said that the redevelopment approach gives the town more control over development. But it's not clear that the Township committee has had any control over the rehabilitation/remediation of the quarry. No Township official seems to be interested in groundwater quality monitoring. No Township official seems to be aware that the proposed lake, a surface water body, will cover a sizable portion of the contaminated area. No Township official seems to be interested in surface water body quality monitoring or understand that groundwater and surface water are 2 different categories, or be aware that MQI's LSRP has not made DEP aware of the lake that has already begun to fill. No Township official seems to know that the final lake elevation is unknown and that a new pumping permit would be required to operate the pumps that would prevent buildings around the lake from flooding. These are only some of the serious issues that are not under control. Residents have no reason to believe that Township officials will have any better control over a major redevelopment project. Fourth, the tax assessor lists the quarry at $4.5 million. Yet Mr. Millay and other Township officials say it's worth $20 million or more. Is our tax assessor wrong? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, Maria Splendorio, 510 South Maple. I'm actually wearing 2 hats today. One is one of the Basking Ridge moms, and another one is the developer's wife. I live in the town. I have my business in this town, and I'm not really here to ask a question, so that's why my back is to you. But I'm here to tell you, this last month has been ridiculously hard for my family, and I guess it was self-induced. We stepped in because we felt it was the right thing to do. I could tell you that, we saw that this property was, by the Mahans, were being chipped off, and developments were happening. They were just selling to little pieces to developers. And, result went to tall timber, which is beautiful, but it's just houses, more houses on our property, and they're gorgeous. Another development right near there, and another one that I thought was actually the quarry, but it actually was the Winters property, which I didn't realize, resulted in another 10 houses. Nobody was looking at the whole property, and we stepped in. We thought that there could be something really great for this town. Gaziano has said this is a first draft, and it is. My husband is the type of developer that, when he got into it, he's a landscape architect by trade. As you know, most of you know, we own Back to Nature. He used to come home before he was a developer and say, I'm the last one invited to the party, and they want me to supply the entertainment. He used to come home and say, now I got to fix what all the developers did, and try to make it right. So we stepped into the arena and became developers ourselves. We feel like we try to engage the community. We try to do the best we possibly can to make everybody happy. We are trying to do that, and we hear you. I watched on Basking Ridge Moms. I got ripped apart by Basking Ridge Moms. I got anonymous emails this last month, and it has been really hard. Now I know why our kids get bullied. I don't like talking in front of a group of people, and this is the scariest thing I've ever had to do. But I live in this town. I love this town. I wouldn't do anything to hurt this town. Everyone says, I know what the developers have at stake. This isn't going to change my life at all. Money does not mean anything to me at all. And, if you want to know what type of developer my husband is, he engages the community. We've done a couple of sites, and look at them. Fern Valley was one of our first developments. It's 28 acres in Tewksbury Township. He put 4 houses on there. All of the profit went to a covered bridge that is absolutely gorgeous. Fern Valley, Tewksbury Township. Google it. And all of our profit went to that covered bridge, which is now a milestone in that town. People send me pictures of their wedding pictures under that bridge. And that makes it worth it, every cent of it. 120 acres in Delaware Township. He donated half of it to the township, and which we could have put 30 houses on. And the other part was 6 houses. He's not all about making a profit. He's about doing the right thing. If you don't believe it, look at the development he's already done. I believe in him. I believe in everything that he stands for. I have put my phone number on Basking Ridge Moms. I said that he was open to any questions, and it got slapped into my face. We have these meetings, and then right afterwards, it's, he's having these meetings, and it's hush hush, and it's on the sidebar. My email is mms@backtonature.net. My cell phone is 908-337-1658. You want a meeting with him? You want to talk with him? You want to engage with him? He's available. Sometimes he's been at these meetings so late I'm not even able to stay up by the time he gets home. I don't know how more open and transparent we could be. I don't know, but it just seems like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'm willing to do whatever I can to make this process engaging with all of you. I'm willing to do whatever I can, but I understand that there's going to be some people that are just going to see one side and one side only, and and believe whatever you want to believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to stop the public comment right now to do our regular business, and then we will come back to public comment. Okay, so
Public comment time.
do I need to close public comment?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Just lost my glasses. Okay, the first order of business is fire and rescue appointments, Resolution 2017-0394.
This is appointment to membership.
Get up to the mic, yeah.
Okay.
This is appointment to membership in the Township of Bernard's Liberty Corner Fire Company Incorporated. Matthew R. Perillo, full member. Michelle Monduro, full member.
Do I have a motion? So moved. Thank you, Ms. Bianchi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Aye. Okay. That brings us to the consent agenda. The items listed within the consent agenda portion of the meeting have been referred to the Township Committee for reading and study, linked to the posted agenda, and are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion of the Township Committee with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is required, the item may be removed from the agenda by Township Committee action and placed on the regular agenda under new business. Are there any items that anyone would like to remove?
Yes, Mayor. Item 6,
Okay.
11, and 17.
I have one, Mayor. I just can't find it. I'm sorry. I feel like it changed. I wanted to pull off. I can't find it.
What's it about?
It's I do want to pull off 28 and 29 so we can talk about that.
Number 18, Mayor.
Okay.
28, 29?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything left?
Do you want to talk about that?
No. Did you find it, Carol?
I did, 28 and 29.
Oh, okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion for the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait. Tom motioned?
No, John.
Okay, Deputy Mayor motioned and Tom Russo seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi.
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mr. Malay.
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay, that brings us to item number 6, which was Resolution 2017-0393.
Right. Todd asked that we pull this for an explanation.
Yeah.
Bruce or Tom?
Well, which item was that?
Item 6, the authorizing shared service agreement with Township of Bernards.
Public Works.
Yeah, this was, the county did a pedestrian study we asked them to do after the accidents on Allen Road. This came out of that study, and they're recommending a couple of devices that will help warn drivers about their speed. They won't install them and maintain them. They'll install them if we pay for some of them and if we maintain them. So we need this agreement.
Okay, thank you. On Allen Road? He can't hear. Tom?
It's in a couple of different locations on Allen Road. There's 4 different locations spread out throughout Allen Road between up in the hills section.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion?
Move 2017-0393.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi.
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Mr. Malay.
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano.
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to number 11, which is Resolution 2017-0399.
Thank you, Mayor. Question about who the license is going from and who it's going to.
This is the, in its Somerset Hill, it was in receivership. It was an organization that was in receivership, and now it's going to the partnership that they formed, Valor Hospitality.
Okay, thank you. I move 2017-0399.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to number 17, which is Resolution 2017-0406.
Thank you, Mayor. Bruce, just a brief explanation of what this accounts for and where we stand cash-wise with respect to it and the operation of the fields.
Yes. What this resolution will do will formally establish these reserves that were discussed back when we built the turf fields. We hadn't done it yet. Revenues are actually above our projections, so they're healthy, and this, all the world will see, in the years going forward that $50,000 a year will be placed in this reserve. So when the fields reach their useful life, we'll have the money to replace them without a sudden surprise. This was the way the auditors suggested us to do it.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Mayor, I move 2017-0406.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to number 18, which is Resolution 2017-0407.
Yeah, Bruce, if you could just walk through that since you and I had discussed that.
Yes. We've been buying our power and natural gas over the last 4 years or so through the New Jersey Sustainable Energy Group. They're an offshoot of PERMA. That's an offshoot of the people that administer our JIF. There's other organizations out there that provide these auction platforms. So this authorizes us to have an energy auction with MX. They've done lots of these auctions, not only in New Jersey, but in other states as well. From what I've seen, they attract a lot of bidders. And so this authorizes us to accept their auction results. The auction is actually tomorrow. It includes all the sewage authority accounts as well. A couple of the shortcomings of the SEM were there were a couple accounts that they would not place in their auction because the power profile didn't fit them right, and those were the sewer plant themselves. The sewer plant itself, and was because there's that solar field, and so the power use varies wildly between winter and summer. And Pleasant Valley Pool is the other one that has such a high seasonal use. And so those two accounts will be in this auction too, and I'm optimistic that we'll save a few bucks. 25% of this of the auction will be for renewable energy sources, which is a goal of the New Jersey Sustainable Energy certification as well. So that is an added bonus, and I'll share the results of the auction with you, as soon as it's in, 11 o'clock tomorrow, if anyone wants to come up and see it. So.
Great, thank you. Do you want to move that resolution?
Yeah, I'll move Resolution 2017-0407.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Millay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to number 20, which is Resolution 2017-0409.
20?
Yeah, didn't somebody pull 20?
No, 28 and 29.
I have 28 and 29.
Yeah. Okay.
28-29.
Okay.
28 then. Resolution 2017-0417.
Okay, I can actually address both of them at the same time, and I think this question is really
I don't
for...
think you can. You
Really?
pass one at a time.
Okay, all right, then we'll start with 28. And Tom Timko, probably you're best to answer this, but can you just describe the scope of the services? That I did read the proposals. I'm just not clear what it is at this time we're going to be asking them to do.
So some of the questions that have been coming up during the redevelopment process tonight and on October 24th really gets not so much into the redevelopment zoning, but the older contamination issues at the quarry. These particular consultants had, during the planning board hearings in 2011 and 2012, presented reports that answer some of those questions. So we thought it would be best if we brought those consultants back to answer the questions to the public at a public meeting on December 12th. We just need to get these contracts in place to do that. So it's really about answering the public's questions in regards to the redevelopment process.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to move that resolution?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion for 2017-0417?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
No.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to Resolution 2017-0418.
Same issue. Can you just describe the scope of their services?
In the case of the Princeton Hydro, they're going to speak more specifically about the lake. That was their testimony when they were hired by the planning board during the rehab hearings back in 2011, 2012. So they were presenting expertise on the lake. So that's what we're going to bring them back for.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
No.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to Resolution 2017-0400.
This is appointment of insurance and employee benefits risk manager Meeker, Sharker, and Hurley for a 3-year period, 11/28/17 to 11/28.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse on this one since I run the statewide insurance fund. I don't want to be a part of the discussion.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move 0400.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
Carries.
That brings us to Ordinance 2375.
This is an ordinance accepting Ken Worthy Court, and this is an introduction.
Mayor, I move that Ordinance 2375 be introduced on first reading, advertised as required by law, and scheduled for a public hearing on 12/12/17.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Ms. Bianchi?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Malay?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Mayor Gaziano?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, and then we need to go back to Township Committee and staff comments because I skipped that before, and then we will go back to public comment and answers. So Township Committee and staff comments. Mr. MacArthur?
Just very quickly, I just wanted to recognize the service of Bill Draper to the whole town and to our country. Bill passed away, and he was a valuable resource to both the town and the school system and to the U.S. Army. What an amazing man. Launched more rockets into space than any other man in history. Lived a incredible full life and was such a contributor to the life of this town. So I just wanted to recognize him.
Thank you, Bruce. Denise?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Tom?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, John?
I want to echo Bruce's comments regarding Bill Draper, who I knew for many, many years. In fact, I had visited Bill just last September at Fellowship Village, and he seemed in good health, in good spirit, in a good state of mind, and he was quite the fellow. And I just learned now that he passed away, so I express my condolences to his family.
Thank you. Tom?
No, thank you.
Mr. Millay?
Yeah, let me echo that about Bill Draper. I think a lot of people in town don't know about Bill Draper. He was just a retired resident in town, but he was the township demographer. He provided endless amounts of demographic and population data to both the township and to the school board, to the point where he was a big help in planning for school expansion and school redistribution and things like that. A classic example of how a volunteer can have an incredible contribution to this township. He was a Southern gentleman. He was very laconic. He was very avuncular. I first ran into him when he was on the planning board. He was chairing the planning board. And as you can guess, the planning board sometimes gets fairly heated in its discussions and people start yelling. Bill just was like, kept that all under control. He spoke very slowly. He spoke in a Southern drawl. He was emphatically polite at all times, and his persona up there kept a lot of problems from occurring. He was a guy who, well, I'm not going to go on about it, but he was a Marine at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir in Korea. If any of you know about that, the Marines were surrounded in sub-zero weather and had to fight their way out. Bill was one of 7 survivors out of a company of 220. He, it just had this unflappable aspect to him. I gather he was never sick a day in his life until he had his stroke a number of years ago. And Carolyn, Mayor Gaziano, and I went over to visit him at the rehab place. On the first day that he was allowed to eat solid food, they figured he was able to chew and swallow. And they gave him a hamburger, and they asked him, Mr. Draper, how do you like your hamburger? And he went, not greasy enough. And that was him in a nutshell. And I can't tell you how big a loss that is for the township, that someone like that would eventually, in his own time pass away. So my condolences to his family and to his friends, and, God bless.
Thank you. Ms. Bianchi?
Yeah, everything that John Millay said, I was very fond of him, and God bless Bill Draper. And with regard to all the comments tonight on the quarry, I'm going to reserve comments and questions because I know that we want to get back to you, the public, to ask more questions and comments. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Bill Draper, I asked him once what it was like at the Chosin Reservoir that Mr. Millay described, and he just said very quietly, "He was cold, John." That's all he would say about it.
Yeah.
So it's been a busy few weeks. The Field of Honor was held up here at Town Hall. The flags were just beautiful, and I thank our staff for putting that together and making town look fantastic. We had wonderful speakers come in and recognize the service and sacrifice of our veterans. Also, on the 5th of November as well, I attended a Verizon emergency services drill with Mr. Millay. Our Basking Ridge Fire Company organized a multi-unit response in the event, training in the event of a fire at the Verizon complex. It was fascinating. They had 3 pumper trucks going at the same time. They just wanted to test that the site had the capacity to handle that, should they ever have to do that. And gosh, I think there were something like 20 different units involved in 4 different simulated alarms. And I want to commend our first responders for giving up their Sunday and organizing that event to provide for everyone's safety. And finally, in the same vein, the spaghetti dinner at the Liberty Corner Fire Company on the 4th was really great as usual. And that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I also want to send my condolences out to Bill Draper's family. Bill was just a fabulous guy. We loved talking to him, and Bruce and I loved to just re-crunch his numbers. As a matter of fact, next meeting, you'll hear a lot about school numbers from Bruce and I, and most of those were done by Bill Draper. And he was just a great guy to talk to, and just the nicest man ever. So his service, in case anyone is interested, will be on December 5th at Galloway and Crane at 11 o'clock. Some other things that have happened since our last meeting. We had the Halloween festivities at Dunham Park. The deputy mayor and I judged the pumpkin carving contest. There was also a pumpkin roll and a monster mash dance party that was very well attended. The Ross Farm held their first ever haunted house tour, which was terrific. So if you didn't get to go to it this year, plan on going next year. The Historical Society of the Somerset Hills had their haunted walking tour of downtown Basking Ridge. A number of us attended the League of Municipalities the week of November 14th. I moderated, and Lieutenant Eric Galetta gave a presentation on animal control and the success of the Bernards Township Deer Management Program. I also attended Eagle Scout Jack Forsheim's Eagle Scout ceremony. I want to shout out to the Basking Ridge First Aid Squad. In 27 years living in town, I had to make my first 911.
The master plan says there'll be 40 homes on this site. This proposal ignores that. What this area of town, the center of town, could use is open space, a park. Has this been considered? Everybody's mentioned that, of course. It doesn't seem like it, though. Has the Environmental Commission been asked for its opinion of this proposal? No. I am told that a park at the quarry is financially infeasible. The land would cost $40 million to buy and improve. But I note that in 2005, the Bernard School District floated and voters approved a $44 million bond issue to primarily expand the high school. For me and my neighbors, the developer's quarry proposal seems like development for the sake of development. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Heather Gallagher. I live on 70 North Finley. Just want to say two things. At the last meeting, it was said, quote, doing nothing is not an option, and, quote, do nothing. So my question is, which is it? Are we going to have the landowners develop it, or are we going to have someone experienced like Marie and Anthony who know what they're doing and have an amazing setup plan, which was proposed? I think something to keep in mind is that, like Anthony said, this is very first draft of everything, and I think that people need to be open-minded. I think that things are not in stone. And one thing on a personal note is people need to be kind. These are, like everyone knows, they are part of our community, and they're human. And they're doing this all on their extra time outside of their work, and they're putting in a tremendous amount of hours to do this, to make this better for our community. They care about our community, and they've been here a very long time, and they want what's best for everyone. On social media platforms, when they say, with people bashing and whatnot, they have been the most open to talk to, and I think that people need to get educated. People need to call up Maria. She's given her email. They need to call Anthony. They need to call whoever it takes to set up a meeting, because I know I've seen them meet with tons of people. I even said to get an open, go to Old Mill Inn and rent the ballroom so people can just do questions and answers, because they're very open to everything to answer questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, Marco Harmony and Kim Krikorian from 7 Tall Timber. We moved to Basking Ridge just 9 months ago to Tall Timber, and we had bought the property and had been presented by the realtors with the 2-acre zoning. So for us, it was a pretty big surprise after having bought the house and then just finding out about it a few months later, what the changes are. What I would like to say also is that I really do appreciate Anthony and Mr. Plasik's comments tonight in their presentation. I know it did require a lot of time and thought and effort, and I think there are a lot of merits to the plan, and in particular, the aesthetics. And I think it should be mentioned that it's not their, they're not required to talk in front of the town, so I think it's they should be recognized for presenting their plans and seeking public input, whereas I imagine many developers would kind of railroad it through. With that said, being in a corner lot where we have the potential to absorb
will be intimately involved.
90% of the traffic flow of the area, we'd like to just say for our particular selves that we oppose the current traffic plans as they're written in the plan right now. Furthermore, we just came from Chatham, which is not too far away, but just on the other side of the swamp. But there's a very different feel just in terms of rural, open area, and that's one of the main attractions that brought us over here. And I think in any plan that goes forward, we would like to see that embraced and maintained, and some of those aspects would be light and noise pollution. I know someone's mentioned it in the past, but seeing the dark area out there, and I know it may sound like a small thing, but there's something great about it, and I don't know if that can be worked into the plan. And I do have concerns about the way the commercial space will affect just visually what that space will look like night and day.
And we realize we're the microcosm of the macrocosm, but perhaps other people might understand the whole loving the rural feel of the town type thing when you're planning.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
David, Anthony.
Hi, Dan McCabe, Princeton Court. You guys have an enormous burden making decisions that affect our town in perpetuity. And there's a lot to like about this plan. There's maybe some things not to like about this plan. Some very fair questions asked by some very smart people earlier in the evening. There's some, I think, perhaps unfair questions asked by people as well. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your service for our community. I recognize that you don't often hear thank you, and so from me, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Doherty, 76 Manchester Drive. I'd like to start off by saying that it saddens me to hear about what the Splendorias are, the negative feedback that they're getting. They are part of our neighborhood, part of our town, so it saddens me to hear what they're going through. I don't think that's, it's very unlike the residents of Basking Ridge to behave that way. I think people are very frustrated. I think they're frustrated because they don't feel that they're being heard. It doesn't justify the negativity that they're facing. We've heard a lot of reasons why we shouldn't move forward with this plan. We've heard of the environmental reasons, the health reasons, the traffic, the noise, the financial risk, the educational impact on the schools. But I think the biggest reason why we should take a step back and not move forward with this plan is to kind of turn around and look at the over 200 people that came out tonight. They're against this. These are your family, your friends, your neighbors. They're your constituents. And they don't want that. That is not what they want. So I end with this. I beg you to listen to the people in your town, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your constituents, and hear them when they say, we don't want this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Ellen, 1 Pheasant Run Drive. Just want to address a number of issues that have been coming up tonight. One of them is traffic. I live on the corner of Stonehouse and Pheasant Run. So think about it, game it out. And I think that's one of the problems that I see here tonight is that we really aren't gaming out the whole scenario. Look at the corridor on 206. You go down there, that traffic is horrendous, day in, day out. 1 lane in each direction. All the overdevelopment. You do this development in Stonehouse, all of a sudden you're going to be having huge traffic jams, and all of a sudden you're going to eminent domain part of my property and all the people along it to widen that road, because that's the only way you can handle the traffic. You need to step back and think about all the impact studies that need to be done by any developer who even wants to develop any part of this quarry. Services, sewage, water, traffic, schools. Each one of those is an impact study, and the list goes on and on and on. All of those impact studies need to be done by impartial people, not people hired by you, not people hired by the developers. It's got to be done. If you look at the school system, my understanding is that we were sold the same bill of goods when the Hills was developed. And the Hills was going to be empty nesters and all this stuff. And then what happened? Liberty Corner School was overrun, so you had to build Mount Prospect. You cannot tell me that millennials are having children, okay? You want to understand the demographics? I'm a baby boomer, okay? Millennials are the children of baby boomers, essentially, the first half of the baby boom generation, okay? They're growing up, they're having children now, okay? They're going to move into a development like this because they can't afford a house yet, but they're going to have kids, okay? They're going to come into our school system. They're going to overwhelm the school system. It's just plain and simple. You look at the demographics, okay? You cannot tell me millennials aren't having kids, okay? They are, okay? They're perennials now. If you read the New York Times a week and a half ago, they were talking about perennials, all right? So there's all these impacts that you need to look at and think about before you even consider any kind of development of this quarry. And then, of course, you have all the health issues, arsenic in the water, arsenic in the land, all the contaminants, okay? Bedrock, there's shale underneath, just about 6 feet under every house in New Jersey. It's shale, okay? If you do this development, what happens, I right now have issues with flooding sometimes in my basement, okay? We've got some pumps, we had, Hurricane Floyd and all the tropical rains. I got flooded. What happens when you do this? And water is everywhere. You're changing the water patterns. You're changing all of this stuff, and it affects everybody around it. So you need to do all of these impact studies. You need to think about this before you even consider any development there. And I don't see that happening. I think people are frustrated. We talked about, Anthony talked about, been doing this for 2 years. 2 years, nobody's been discussing it in this kind of a forum for 2 years. So I think people are frustrated that they haven't heard about this until now. And I think that's where the frustration and anger comes in. So, I agree. I don't think people should be bullied. I don't think people should be nasty. But you really need to listen to constituents, listen to the people of the town, and think about things before you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Because please try and be succinct, because I would like to get to some answers possibly tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Hodges, Lower Sterling Road. Thank you for mentioning Bill Draper. I had the good fortune of worshiping with him at Bishop James. He was a fine person. My comments are thank you for this evening so I could be educated. But in more general, one thing I'm not sure I'm hearing is a general approach towards those people who live in the township from an equity standpoint. What I mean is, if I read correctly, there's going to be lot coverages that are not consistent with current rules and ordinances, while I've sat through meetings where other people have been forced to live with those. So I'm not quite sure why those rules are not going to be in play here. And they have not been in play for me. And I live in a residential lot that was zoned in 1956. Sewerage. I live in an environmentally sensitive area, and yet I cannot get to the sewer. And me and previous homeowners on my lot have been told because there's no capacity. Now all of a sudden there's capacity. So I just hope that there is a rethinking of how the general population, and when they start coming with their variance questions and their sewer hookup questions, that they are being treated in similar ways, because I'm not quite sure I see that equity in the approach, and I hope that that's given due thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita Zarabara, Thackeray Drive, and I will try not to repeat a lot of what was said tonight. I'm not in favor of the development as it stands, the redevelopment as it stands. I think the biggest question I have is why, as a township committee and why, as a town, do we need to take this on? You know, what's the reason for that? I'd love to hear an explanation for it. I think I've moved here 25 years ago. I live off Pond Hill Road. I'm close to the quarry. I've always been aware of the master plan and that there were, 2-acre housing, zoned for 2-acre housing, and there was a plan for 40-something houses. So I'm not sure why we need to get involved in changing that. One of the things I wanted to ask about, maybe you can clarify, is what the timeline is from your standpoint. Mayor, you mentioned that there were going to be some work sessions going forward in December. Mm-hmm. My concern is why is this such a rush? Why is there a rush now? It's the holiday season. People are really busy. There's obviously a lot of concern with this plan. I think this is the wrong time of the year to do this. I know John and I spoke even pre-election. He told me there would be no vote this year. I think people really need to become more involved. The developers tonight asked, what does the community want? They want to know what we want. I think you need to give us an opportunity to talk to them some more. I think people in the community need to be on small groups maybe and have task forces where they have a little bit more input. We have so many people here that have great expertise. Let's tap into them and use them so we get this right if we're going to do it at all. But I really am not in favor of this. It's a landlocked area. And there's just too much going on there. The egress into Pond Hill Road will be a nightmare. That road is already dangerous, and I can't imagine traffic coming through Tall Timber and out onto Pond Hill every day. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Humbert, 48 Deer Creek Drive. So, I have a request. Maybe the developer could give us a scale model of this plan. All this conception is great. It's generalities. It looks wonderful, but maybe we'd have the benefit of a scale model. Also, we heard today that the contaminants in the quarry consist of asphaltic materials. I think the reports speak differently. The reports speak of lead, benzoanthracene, tetrachlorophyll, other elements, aluminum, manganese, silver, zinc, sodium, iron, and of course the naturally occurring arsenic. These things, I think, need to be considered first before any development can be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comments? And if not, then we'll get on to answers.
Good evening, Stella Perna, 105 Tuxford Terrace. I don't live near the quarry, but I do live in town, and I love this town. I've been here 20 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. I lived here back in '93 before the Hills was built. I lived on Lyons Road, and Lyons Road is a busy road. After the Hills was built, it got to be a pretty busy road. Kind of disappointed on how that was done, but it is what it is. Sad to see the horse farm off of Lyons Road, which is now Paddock Lane. Sad to see that disappear, but that's progress and that's change. I have to say, taking the train into the city years ago and looking out into that open pit, it's kind of depressing. I find this plan intriguing. You know, this is just a concept. This is not set in stone. I know Anthony and Maria peripherally. I wouldn't consider us close friends, but we are parishioners at the church that we attend. I find that the way they conduct their business is always with the right thing in mind. They live here. They certainly don't want to ruin our town. And the way I look at it, I'd rather go with a developer we know than a developer we don't. Because if we go with somebody we don't know, God knows what we'll get. So I support them. I think they've been great about answering questions. They've made themselves available. I wish them all the best. I pray for them because I think the way they've been treated is pretty awful, and I think they deserve so much better. I love the idea that they're open to hearing public comment. I think that's fantastic. You don't hear that too often. In this day and age, I think it's a very great thing that they're doing this. So I wish them the best. I wish the best for our town. Our town is a pretty great town. I'd like to keep it that way. This is intriguing to me in so many ways. I don't want the neighbors in Tall Timber affected. I don't want any of those people affected. But I think they're open to hearing that, and that's a pretty good thing. So I just wanted you guys to know that, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Sorry. Lisa Winter, 507 South Maple Avenue. I just want to say that, I think that this development in isolation is very interesting and lovely, and I appreciate, I know the Splendorios, they're lovely people, and I appreciate that they've made themselves open to questions, but I feel like our conversation right now has to be with you, not with the developers, because at this point, it's I don't think we've engaged with developers yet. We're deciding how to zone the land. And this is your job. And it's really important that we be talking to you. So I don't even want to reflect on the development. I will just tell you that, I've lived here since 1975. I moved here in high school. It was very much a rural community. I came from a busier town. Being in high school, I thought it was very boring and I didn't like it at all. But over time, I came to appreciate just how beautiful it is, what a haven it is, how much I would come back from Somerville or Princeton and I would pull off 78, and I don't know if you remember, those of you who were here, it was all farms, both 78 entrances, and I would just drive into farms and green, and all my streets were green, and it was just beautiful. And so we went through a long period of very intense development in this town, and it had to happen because land was sold. But you, the Township Committee, at a certain point instituted an open space tax and really did a great job. I think we all realized that all this development was starting to make our town busier and more crowded, and the schools bigger, and needing to expand the high school and build new elementary schools, and traffic just started increasing, and we're all talking about the traffic now. And I would also point out that those areas off of 78 filled up with retail and hotels and traffic lights, and so I would come off the highway and I'd be like, it's not the way it used to look. But you've done a good job with the rest of town. You really have. You've preserved the look and feel of a rural community. The downtown is beautiful, and you've just done a great job with all the houses that are coming in, keeping the rural feeling, and you did a great job buying up open space and, instituting the tax. And I felt you were very proactive about it. This proposed development really takes me by surprise because it's high density development. It's not that it isn't done in a really lovely manner, but it doesn't seem like what we've been doing such a good job with, which is keeping, once this happens, once the traffic's on the roads, once you have traffic lights every third corner, once Pond Hill is a different kind of place, you're never going to step back from it. And so I would just echo the people who said this is really important to get this right. I personally would like to see us buy it as open space. And the second thing is I live right near the quarry. I've never even seen it. I'd be fine if it just stayed the way it was, as someone else suggested it. I can't even see it. I don't even know it's there. But I'll definitely know about traffic, and I'll know the impact on if you bring in a small city there, what it's going to do to the rest of town. So I think this isn't a reflection of the development, it's a reflection of the decision you're making. So I hope you make the right decision.
Thank you, Ms. Swinton.
Okay. Yeah, good evening. I'm going to make this very quick. My name is Bill DiLorenzo. I'm at 114 Linden Drive. I'm a Basking Ridge resident for 25 years. I've been following this whole process at least since March. I've been in all I've met that before. I listened intently to what everybody had to say tonight, and something occurred to me that if you think about it, quite a few different visions that could be still distilled out of what could be done with the quarry. With all the meetings I've been to, all the research that I've done, it's pretty much focused on this plan or some variation of it. And I was wondering if it would be possible, because I realize that the property is privately owned and there's, obviously a relationship between the property owner and the developer. But I would like to know if it is possible for the township to consider or maybe present several, just a couple of maybe different visions of what the quarry could be. This would certainly be one of them, or some variation, but something that reflects some of the things that we've heard here tonight that might resolve a lot of these issues. I think I get the feeling that this thing is on a railroad track and it's heading a certain way. I'm not sure where it's going to go, but I think we should have an opportunity to look at some bigger pictures that might be a bit different. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Otherwise, we'll get on to answers. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Good evening. Bill Allen, 44 Holmesbrook Road. I'd like to hear what the other people have to say. I did prepare some remarks, which I can get through in less than 5 minutes, and I think most of them are still relevant. I better put my glasses on, though. By the way, I was very sorry to hear, Bruce, about Bill Draper. And I will echo all of the nice comments. He was a good friend and an extremely hard worker, and the work he did on demographics couldn't be equaled by anybody. The plan introduced at your meeting on October 24 was a very detailed concept plan. Let's call it the October plan. The colored map presented with the plan is probably what most of us looked at first, and we saw problems. Traffic jumped into the minds of many. Others thought of children crowding our schools, and I thought of all the stuff that will go into the lake and adversely affect the water quality. We should study the 63-page description of the plan before we condemn it. It's obviously the result of a lot of work, and it contains many interesting ideas. My fear is that vigorous public opposition to the October plan will discourage serious consideration of any plan, and at the end of the day, we will still have R3 zoning. That, in my opinion, would be a very bad outcome. R3 zoning on the quarry land, with its requirement for 2-acre residential lots, is not defensible. It will be challenged in court by MQI or another developer, and the township will lose. Township litigation experiences with MQI over many years and recently with a mosque have not been happy ones. A biased judge may rule that the township must allow many hundreds of dwelling units, perhaps of a design and quality inferior to what would be produced if the township revised the zoning ordinance in accord with its own objectives. Now, nobody wants this outcome. It can be avoided if you continue the redevelopment process and rezone the property to something that is defensible, is a benefit to the community, and is accepted by the community. Let's look at the October plan and determine what's good and what's bad, what makes sense and what doesn't. Most important, in my opinion, on the good side, is the fact that the plan is being proposed by Anthony Splendorio. He is a very creative guy and he lives in town. If we all work together, I believe we can create something that will be a credit to the community and that will be accepted by it. From my perspective as a long-term resident, I think the proposed office building and hotel make no sense. Township policy since the 70s has been to steer these activities to the I-78 and I-287 interchanges. The community supports this policy, and I see no reason to change it. I think my friend Lisa Winter probably would echo that comment. Multifamily dwellings do make sense. We have solid data that show that multifamily units are home to relatively few public school students and that the property taxes they generate more than cover the cost of educating the students. Not so for single-family detached dwellings. They are homes for relatively many public school students. On average, they are fiscal losers. This is particularly true for new homes because parents with children tend to buy them. The retail proposals are more complicated. Establishments that will support the quarry community itself make sense. Those that need to attract customers from outside make less sense. The Dewey Meadow and Lyons retail centers are nearby and have vacancies. However, I'll add something I didn't write here. I heard some very interesting comments about the village that is lake-oriented and has new kinds of retail, and I think we really have to look at that very carefully. I propose you examine each separate element in the October plan, estimate its traffic and student generation, and the impact on lake water quality, and determine from the township planner and the developer reasons for including it in the October plan. Then design a plan that includes those elements that make sense and excludes those that do not make sense. Easier said than done, of course, but it's the only rational way to proceed that I can think of. I plan to submit a letter with a more detailed proposal. Thank you for considering it.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Is there anyone else for public comment? Otherwise, we'll get to answers. Okay, I'm closing public comment. Okay, so I would like to, since we only have Mr. Sorgi tonight, I would like to go to some of the environmental questions first. So let me just see what we had. Okay, so Kevin Orr had asked about when, well, I don't know if you could even ask this. This might be a Tom Timko question, but when did quarry operations cease? And he was asking about the rehabilitation process, where we are in that.
I don't recall the exact date when it ceased, but it was over a year ago. And I had issued a memo to the planning board at that time about that date, and I apologize, I don't recall the date, but I did issue a memo on that.
Okay, so that's on our website, I'm sure.
I don't know if it's on the website. We do have a record of it. We can get it on the website if we need to. As far as the current state of rehabilitation, it's about 90% complete. There's no active work going on at the moment. The quarry owners had indicated that some of the items in the rehab plan, they don't intend to pursue it. We are holding their bonds because it's not done. So it's basically not completely done at this point.
Okay, and then possibly Mr. Sorgi could answer this. He was asking about the surface water body.
It's a difficult question, but there is no, at the time in remediation.
Oh.
You have to use the microphone.
Which way will we go?
You face us and use the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. At the time of the remediation plan, and until the time when the quarry pumps were shut off, it was not a surface water body, not according to the definition of the state of New Jersey. So none of the surface water quality issues are relevant. It's not a sensitive environmental receptor. The cap that we put in and the testing that was done by the township's consultants and by JMS also included what was called a synthetic precipitation leaching procedure, which is prescribed by the DEP to determine whether soils, whatever is in them, will leach into water. And in all sets of data, it came out negative. That's the only test that I'm aware of as an LSRP that is acceptable to the DEP to determine whether or not soil contamination will leach. It's simply prescribed by their regulations and their guidance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could I, Mayor, just interject
yes,
for
go
a second?
ahead.
You know, the issue of the cap being partially submerged, it's a little perplexing. It's not intuitive that you could contain contamination with a cap that's submerged. How often does this occur, this practice of capping contamination and having it be submerged partially or completely?
Okay. The purpose of the cap is not to prevent contact with water. This is not an impervious cap. I think Mr. Orr stated that, and we never stated it was in our reports, nor is it required. The objective of this cap is to prevent people or animals from coming in contact with the contaminated material. Direct contact, eating it, playing in it, rolling around in it. The fact that it's covered with water is no different than saturated soil under groundwater. It's exactly the same thing from a technical standpoint. That's what the synthetic precipitating leachate procedure is all about. It's to determine if contaminants that are found below the groundwater table or adjacent to water are going to, in fact, impact that water. I had nothing to do with creating that procedure. It's prescribed by DEP. It was established by the EPA. It is the way the technical analysis is conducted.
Thank you.
Okay, that was all the questions that I have from the public for Mr. Sorgi, but does anyone else on the dais have any other questions for Mr. Sorgi?
Mr. Sorgi, just one question. I think this is the concern of a lot of people. Is one of the key features of the proposed development is this lake as a recreational facility. Do you feel, in your professional opinion, that having some of this contaminated soil capped under the lake water will have a negative effect on the water quality in the lake?
I don't want to project myself as an expert on the lake from an ecological standpoint. That's not my expertise. My expertise is in determining whether the impacted fill that's buried below the lake or adjacent to the lake will impact the lake. And the answer to that, according to all the tests that I know how to do and that Icon Engineering knows how to do, is no.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I do, but go ahead.
But will there be opportunities?
No, Mr. Sorgi will most likely not be back.
Okay, then I guess I better start asking questions. So, Mr. Sorgi, the DEP is reviewing your submission as of now, correct? So the next step is, what is the final step so that we know whether or not the site is clean? Is it a no further action letter from the DEP?
No, the Site Remediation Reform Act essentially did away with no further action letters, except for specific cases, homeowner heating oil tanks, the DEP will still write, but everything else is called now a response action outcome, which is issued by the LSRP and reviewed by the DEP. So that will be the final thing that the town will need to know that the quarry is clean. With that, there will be a soil remediation permit, which is the way that the DEP monitors the maintenance of that cap, so that if there's any erosion, the cap has to be restored. Whatever maintenance needs to be done, the permit process is the way the DEP monitors that.
So does the DEP do a thorough review of it, or is it just a technical, checklist of whether you submitted certain items?
No, the DEP does a full review of the permits once they're submitted. They won't issue a permit approval until they've reviewed all the documents that were submitted on that case.
I've been speaking with the DEP, one of the representatives, but is there an opportunity or a mechanism for residents to speak directly to a representative from the DEP? What is the process for residents to get more assurance from the DEP that the site is clean? They'll feel some assurance about that.
I think that's between you and the DEP. I can't answer for the DEP. I can only answer for what the rules are, what the regulations are.
Right. So I had questions about that MOA area and its nexus to the lake and the organic farm that's being proposed in the restaurant. Could you explain to me why, if you're able, why it will be a safe situation for, if it's contiguous to the lake and the organic farm, why do you feel assured that there will be no migration of contamination?
Okay. Well, my role in this is to apply the DEP regulations to determine whether that MOA area will impact anything around it. And the analysis that was done, again, by the Township's consultants, by us, and attested to by other consultants, we did all the tests that are required. According to all the tests that we've done, there is no impact on adjacent property or adjacent water. I don't know how to state that any more clear.
Right. So if the rainwater goes through the cap and it's in contact with the contamination, why would it not migrate? Is it because of the type of contaminants that you found in those areas?
There is a procedure. The DEP classifies contaminants as mobile or immobile. Immobile contaminants are not going to move according to the DEP's analysis. Mobile contaminants you're required to evaluate using that SPLP test that I talked about to determine whether those materials on your site will impact the water, the precipitation coming through, the groundwater below, etc. That's the procedure to test for it.
Okay, so in one of the reports, there were contaminants found in the upgradient well, I think you call it. I'm not a scientist, but there was no migration to the lower well. Do you recall that part of your report?
That was in our initial report. It wasn't in our final report, I don't believe.
So in the final report, what was the result of the wells testing?
The DEP's groundwater criteria is 2 rounds of clean results. In all of the wells that we installed, after the cap was installed, we got 2 rounds of clean results except for arsenic, which again is a natural component of the formation.
Are you recommending future monitoring of the wells, or will the DEP recommend? I know you can't speak for the DEP, but what will the future monitoring be to make sure that there's no migration?
According to the DEP testing procedure, the EPA testing procedure, there is no migration potential.
Okay.
Period.
And with regard to pumping into the Passaic River, will there be any pumping in the future, or is that done?
That's a redevelopment question that is out of my area of expertise.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any further questions for you at this time. Okay,
I'd just
thank
like
you.
to add one more thing. I've been a resident of this town. I went to Ridge High School.
Oh.
I've been here forever. So I have a lot of respect for the town.
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from the dais? No, okay. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to some of the other public questions. A couple of people mentioned sewer. Tom, do you want to comment at all on sewer capacity or sewer issues?
Sewage capacity is affected by rainfall because rainwater gets into the system. So there's capacity rules that DEP issues for how flow is calculated. It's based on an average of flows in the past. So what would happen in a development process is at some point the developer would come through and approach the sewage authority for a certain amount of allocation based on a design calculation for what that development would create. At that time, the authority consultant, we have a wastewater consultant that works with us, does the calculation based on our flows. So it is possible that if you have a period of dry weather, there's more capacity, and if you have a period of wet weather, you have less capacity. In general, based on the history at the plant, I would expect there is enough capacity, barring record rainfalls for a year straight. I mean, I do believe there is enough capacity, but we don't actually deal with that until such point as the applicant approaches the authority and makes the request.
Okay, thank you. There were a number of questions about traffic, but I'm thinking that it's too late tonight to go into that. And I know that, Anthony, you have a traffic study going on right now, correct? Which we will have results for at the next meeting on December 12th. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to bring that on the 12th, and we'll go over all the traffic issues on the 12th. Likewise, there were some questions about schools. Bruce and I have been working on that, and again, we're going to have that full report on the 12th. So I'm not going to get into that now because it's too late to start a whole new huge discussion, and we'll have that whole report presentation at the next meeting. Let me see. Emergency services. Bruce, do you want to? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Well, you know, we have looked at it in terms of some cost, municipal costs, and the developers assign those costs. As far as the input I've had from our police department, Tom has input, and Pat from DPW, we've identified those costs and given to the developer. Obviously, they're dependent on what ultimately gets built there, or what's public versus private. In terms of emergency services, yes, we have an all-volunteer fire and first aid squad, and I think Mr. Licata's numbers, were not exactly accurate from my understanding of other places that do charge for services. There are volunteer squads that charge for services so they can make ends meet and so they can staff themselves during the week. There's no secret that our emergency first aid squads especially are stretched very thin, and it's, you mentioned that you had an event at your house and people came there, and, I know how much time those people dedicate, and they're certainly not going to be there forever. So it's one of the things that we're studying in general as to how we keep emergency services going. The fire departments have significant volunteer labor, or well-trained. First aid is where we have the real critical shortage of volunteers right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Okay. The rest of it was really more comments than questions.
I have a question. I don't know who would answer it. Several people have asked, what happens if this project gets underway and something goes wrong, the developer fails, they meet an unforeseen obstacle, who's holding the bag? What's the, what happens to that site? I know clearly the town doesn't own it, so the town doesn't have a responsibility. But who does, and what happens in a situation like that? Any idea who would answer a question like that? I've heard it asked.
I would.
Please.
Clearly, the town would not be liable. It's a private site. If there are vacancies or other things that occur, and there's a failure, it's like many other projects you've seen throughout the country and malls and things like that. It rises and falls with the market and the economy. But the town certainly would not have the legal obligation to step in and rescue a failed private venture.
Right. Okay. A similar question. In a case where there's a development and there's a homeowners association to handle maybe drainage issues, or you know how that goes. We have these detention basins. Suppose 50 homes were built there on 2 acres each, and they had this lake that this community was trying to support. What if that homeowners association failed Does that happen ever? And then what happens?
We have typical, and Tom's certainly aware of this, that's required for planning board approvals, detention basin and drainage and access easements that are routinely enacted, and typically there's DEP requirements under the administrative code regulations that require owners' manuals now and maintenance and upkeep. Typically there is a section in the agreement that allows the town the right to come in in most cases, a residential homeowners association, it could be a commercial association, has failed with their responsibilities and to charge back that particular entity. I'm not aware in my 20 years of experience as township attorney that we've ever had to do that. Maybe Tom has knowledge, but I'm simply not aware that we've had to go into a homeowner situation and do that where the homeowners simply refuse to take care of the basin, or a commercial owner that has a basin either above ground or underground has refused to maintain it. But there are provisions in our form agreements that allow us, if we elect to do so, it's not mandatory that we do so, to take action.
That's the key thing. It's not mandatory.
It is not mandatory.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else from the dais have any questions they would like to ask of developer, potential developer?
Will there be opportunities in the future to ask?
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to answer just a couple more questions, and then I'll do a little wrap-up, and then we'll talk. So someone had asked about, well, a lot of people had asked about open space. Why can't you just buy it as open space? And some people had asked about what's the worst-case scenario. So, again, you have to go back to the beginning, that this property is owned by Millington Quarry, and the potential developer has a contract to purchase it from them. So if we wanted to make it a park, then someone, either privately or public entity, would have to buy out the contract. So you're talking millions of dollars. How many millions? I don't know exactly. Someone would have to, go in and negotiate that. But there's also the carrying costs of this type of a property. You would have to maintain the lake. So you're talking about at least $1 million a year just on lake maintenance. So I'm not sure that that's something that the town is prepared to do. But a private person or group could certainly try to, raise that kind of money if they wanted to do something like that. But someone also asked, why did we get involved in this to begin with? So we got involved in it to begin with because there's an opportunity to make something that's better than the 2-acre zoning. The 2-acre zoning, the problem with it is it's negative tax revenue. And so some people might not have a problem with that, but when you build 50 homes, the school children from those 50 homes cost more than you're bringing in tax revenue. And then the bigger thing was that there would be no public access to the lake. So by doing some kind of a redevelopment plan, whatever kind of redevelopment plan, it gave us the opportunity to try and work with the developer who was willing to work with us to get public access to the lake, including open space and bike trails and a boardwalk around the lake, and get public access to that. That is something that we heard very early on from many years ago all the way through, was that people wanted access to the lake and people wanted those kind of recreational opportunities. So that's what started this process. Then we added in other things, like we wanted to keep the number of school kids down. This is something that I've been working with Anthony on and Bruce for over 2 years, to make sure that it limited the number of school kids, because that limits the cost to the town. We also wanted to make sure that overall it was going to be tax neutral or tax positive to the town, which again, that brings in some of the commercial development, because pretty much any time you do just a residential development, it's negative. Now, the mix of houses that he has proposed, it actually is slightly positive, just the residential portion, but it's the commercial portion that brings in a lot more revenue. So that was another reason. And you can go back to look at Dave Banish's report from April 11th. It's on our website, but that lists the full list of, there's like 25 reasons why we thought this might be a good idea, or at least something to investigate and look at. So then somebody asked, what's the worst case scenario? Okay, so the worst case scenario is if we don't come to a compromise, something that works for the developer financially and something that works for the town, and we decide to part ways, then the property reverts back to the Mahans, to Millington Quarry, and then they would then look for another developer to do another project. So what that project would be, we have no idea. It could be 50 homes, or they could wait for an opportunity to sue us, and try and intervene if we were at a point where we were not protected with a settlement having to do with affordable housing. They could try and sue us, and they could try and get, several thousand homes put in there. And the ratio that's used for affordable housing is it's 85% market rate to 15% affordable. So to get, well, what's the math?
To get 150.
To get 150, you can put 1,000.
They would also be able to build 850 market units.
Right. So you'd have 1,000 units total to get 150 affordable. So if you look at Bernardsville just did a settlement where they're building 300 some units to get 51 affordable. So that would be your worst case scenario. You could end up with thousands of units. That's how the Hills was built. There's 1886 or 1826?
1886.
1886 units in the Hills, and that was to do with affordable housing. So that's your worst case scenario. Okay, so going forward, people asked about the timeline. The timeline is we're just going to continue giving information and getting information until such time as we run out of giving and getting information. I don't want to stop the process now while people are engaged. While people are engaged, we're going to continue. As I said before, we have 2 informal sessions coming up where you'll be able to dialogue directly with the developer, directly with their environmental people, directly with their architect, directly with their engineer. So those 2 meetings are November 30th and December 4th, I believe 7 p.m. at Town Hall. After that, on December 12th, will be the next Township Committee meeting. That will be at Town Hall. We are not going to have another meeting here because, A, it costs us a lot of money. B, they don't have the capability to put it onto our TV stations, and it's really important that it's televised so that people can watch it at home. So the next 2 meetings, our meetings, which will be December 12th and December 26th, will be back at Town Hall as normal, but you can watch it on TV. We will be doing the report on schools. We will have ELM group, which is one of our environmental experts who worked on the rehabilitation and the settlement portions. And we will have Princeton Hydro, who also was one of our experts during that time. And Anthony has said that they will be doing the traffic report. So that will all be on December 12th. And then December 26th will be our next meeting. I'm not sure what experts may or may not be at that meeting, but we will continue the dialogue until the dialogue's done.
Can I make a suggestion, Mayor?
Sure.
Mr. Humbert had questions about the scale of the project, and he thought some kind of models might be useful. But I wonder if it would be helpful if people could come into the quarry property and view it from behind the building. I'm not suggesting a tour of the whole site, but if you could just come inside that gate, and walk up to that Lover's Leap over there and just look at it and get a sense of the incredible size of the pit. I think that
I have a suggestion. I think, first of all, it's private property. And I don't know if there's anybody here tonight from High Hill Court, and I don't mean to get in your face, but if you go up to High Hill Court and you go down to the end, where there's a cul-de-sac. On your right, as you go down there, there's a chain link fence up at the top of the berm. Towards the end of that, you can get out of your car, walk up a 6-foot slope, look through the chain link fence, and see the whole thing spread out before you without actually having to go on the quarry property.
Well, I think we should ask the owners if they would be open to that.
Well, we should definitely ask the owners. I could do a guided tour. We could leave every hour on the hour, so whatever. We could. There's ways to see it without going on their property. If they are cooperative, that's great. If they're not, there are other ways to do it, and call me, email me, and I'll take you up there and show it to you. It's pretty impressive, I have to say.
Okay, so any final comments for the dais, or I'm going to wrap it up?
No,
I have just a couple questions
Go
here. So thank you for the timeline. That's helpful. I just have questions about those 2 informal meetings. Are they going to be televised or?
No.
No? Okay.
No, because they're not township committee meetings. They are just informal meetings with the developer.
Okay, so then I think, some of the comments that I've heard, are there concerns about all these separate meetings that are occurring, some that are private, and that we're not really all getting the same information. So what I would ask is that any information from those informal meetings need to be brought back to a public session so that we're all on the same page and we all have the same information. So that's just one comment. The second thing is, I think there are a lot of questions about what is our end objective, and that's the fundamental question for me. Is this the plan? I heard Anthony say you're open to modifications, so are we working backwards from this plan? What's the process for designing a new plan? Or are we going to, have some public conversations about a brand new plan? I don't know. I really don't know where we're headed with this. I think, it's pretty obvious, and I think I've been consistent with my conversations with Anthony and others that I'm not in favor of this plan. I think it's too big. It's not really anything I've ever had in mind. But I did open my mind up to maybe a small redevelopment plan. I was kind of, when we first started meeting these Quarry Task Force meetings, we talked about rezoning. That was the initial purpose, and I was out. I said, nope, I'm not in favor of rezoning the property, but then the 2 attorneys talked about redevelopment, and that's a new concept for me. I've never been involved in it, but the idea of having control over the site was something that interested me, and that's sort of how we got to redevelopment. So here we are, but now I'm saying, how are we going to get to a plan that a new plan? So that's just, I'm throwing that out there. We don't have to answer it tonight, but that's on my mind. And then the last comment that I'll make, I do have a lot of questions, but I can ask those in the informal sessions and in the future because the hour's late. Final comment I want to make is that I really am not in favor of any ordinance moving forward, and what I'm hearing up here is the same until we have all of the questions answered and until the rehabilitation and the remediation are complete. So I think we have a long way to go, and I'm encouraged to hear that. So thank you.
Okay, so I have to make just one more comment on that, which is the rehabilitation is completely separate from the zoning, so it does not have to be complete before a zoning decision is made. So just putting that out there. Okay, so don't forget, the next meetings are the 30th and December 4th, and I hope to see you all there. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.